This challenge was hard. Disgustingly hard. This is by far one of the most grueling and rewarding experiences I've put myself through. The amount of time, effort, patience, Poké Dollars, and Pokemon performance enhancing drugs that went into this video is ridiculous. But it's a story I'm proud to have put together for you, so I hope you enjoy. I want to clear up what rules I'm following here quickly. First, I can only use shiny Pokemon for every battle to progress the story. The shiny Pokemon I pick will be random, and I'll go over how I made my choices as we go. If any of my Pokemon faint, they'll be locked away in my box until this challenge is over, and I won't be able to see them again until the credits roll. I also can't use items like potions, revives, or buff items in battle. I will, however, be using held items, so keep an eye out for that. One last rule that is typical is that I can't overlevel my team past the next boss's level of the game. This prevents me from overleveling my Pokemon and progressing without any real skill or a challenge. I also want to be upfront and say that this was basically a blind run, so I didn't know exactly what the level caps were as I was going. There'll be times where I accidentally overleveled my team, but I promise you it didn't matter in this DLC. The difficulty level has definitely gone up, and there's plenty of pain and suffering ahead. That's enough of the boring rules, so it's probably time I tell you how it all went. The story of this challenge starts right after the events of the Teal Mask DLC. I won't go over what happened in that part of the story here, but don't worry, I'll explain everything important as we go. Basically, I was introduced to Director Serrano, who invited me as an exchange student to study at Blueberry Academy. That's the same school Carmine and Kieran are from, which are the two main characters from the previous part of the story. I guess Carmine put in a good word for me after all the events that took place, which I thought was surprising because the last thing I remember doing was ruining her little brother's life and crushing all of his hopes and dreams, but hey, I'll take it. All that said, I accepted the offer and blindly traveled to Blueberry Academy, not knowing what horrors would lie ahead of me. I ran into my first problem pretty quickly. I don't have a single shiny Pokemon yet, which is a problem if you're doing a shiny only run. Typically in a Nuzlocke, you capture the first Pokemon you see in each route, but because there's no real routes where I'm going, I decided the best way forward was to shiny hunt the first Pokemon I saw. Oh no. I think the first one I looked at was Torchic. I sound a bit sad in the clip, and it's not because I don't like Torchic. Torchic is one of my favorite starter Pokemon of all time, and it holds a lot of nostalgia for me. The problem with Torchic lies in hunting it. Starter Pokemon usually can't be caught in the wild, which is going to make this a bit tricky. This DLC actually aimed to solve that problem by introducing wild starter Pokemon, but I don't even have access to that part of the game yet since I literally just started. I ended up solving this by tapping into my Pokemon Home Living Dex where I had a Torchic ready to go. I transferred over that Torchic and a foreign Ditto to do some Masuda hunting. This shiny hunting method is the reason I was so sad when I saw Torchic as my first target. I am not a huge fan of hatching eggs. It can be one of the most mind-numbing tasks in Pokemon, and it's so much slower than any other shiny hunting method in the game. Regardless of my feelings, I had to press on and just get through this one hunt. As a side note, for this and all hunts I do, I basically used the best shiny hunting odds and methods I could. In this case, I was looking at 1 in 512 odds of getting a shiny Torchic, which isn't too bad of a number, right? Well, that's where you're wrong. Just because the odds are 1 in 512 doesn't mean you're going to get a shiny in 512 eggs, and I was reminded of that the hard way on this hunt. After almost 13 hours of hatching 1,234 eggs in-game, spanning 3 days of real-life hunting, this happened. Oh, I wasn't paying attention. Oh my god. Meet Kenny. Blaziken is one of my favorite Pokemon for nostalgia reasons, but also because of how strong he can be. In a nutshell, he hits fast and hard, and has a really cool ability in Speed Boost, which ups his speed every single turn. I'm no Wolfie, so I'm not going to go in depth for each Pokemon I catch, but I will post a graphic like this for each shiny I catch if you're interested in how I built everyone. Now that my first shiny hunt was done, I could finally start to make some progress in this DLC. It's literally been days since the DLC was released, and I've spent all of it hatching eggs. Oh my god, everything in this DLC is a double battle. That means I need 2 Pokemon just to start. This challenge is going to take a while, I already know it. So the next problem I need to solve is what Pokemon am I going to hunt next? Similar to how I decided on Torchic, I wanted to keep it random. So I ended up rolling back the recordings back to when I saw Torchic, and I recall seeing a second Pokemon there in the distance. It looks like Blossom will be my target for my second hunt. I should be able to find this guy in the wild and shiny hunt in a much more easy and exciting way. Except I can't. It turns out that Blossom is another Pokemon that spawns in the area of the game I don't have access to yet. So it's back to Alfornada to stuff my face full of this butter dish and run in circles with Koraidon. I ended up grabbing an Oddish from Pokemon Home, and I began the painful process of Masuda hunting for the second time. As a side note, there's a timer going in the top left that will run for the duration of the time I shiny hunt. I'm kinda curious how long I'll spend hunting by the end of this video. Back to the challenge though, I was optimistic this hunt would take less time than the first. I mean, I was twice over odds for Torchic. Surely this hunt wouldn't take as long, right? Yeah! There he is! Meet Aloha. Blossom isn't exactly a powerhouse Pokemon, so I just decided to give him moves like Protect and Sleep Powder to help him stall. I even taught him Sunny Day to help support Kenny and enable Aloha's own Chlorophyll ability. With those two hunts down though, and Aloha and Kenny ready to fight, I decided to finally make progress with the story after almost 16 hours of shiny hunting. It's pretty funny taking long breaks from the story to shiny hunt like I did. It's literally been days since I last spoke with any of the characters and I totally forgot what was happening. What was designed to be a few minute story introduction to the DLC has turned into a multi-day marathon. Back to the story, Dr. Sarano introduces us to the best girl, Lacey, and we had a pretty casual conversation. One thing stood out though. I was informed that battling is going to happen much more often here than at any other school, which is terrifying to hear in a Nuzlocke challenge. The last important thing to happen was for Sarano to suggest that Lacey and I battle. It's horrifying, but I'll have to rip off the band-aid at some point. Might as well give this a whirl. Lacey leads with Plusle and Minum, which is one of the most iconic leads for any double battle. Also, I'm a big fan of the Gen 5 music remake, so this was a lovely surprise. Back to the battle, I was smart enough to teach Kenny Earthquake, so I hope that'd be enough to make quick work of these guys. Aloha knew Protect, so that's what he went for. Kenny easily outsped, but they both managed to live, which was a bit scary and annoying. Kenny's built like a glass cannon. He hits hard, but he isn't really meant to take any hits. His defense isn't the best, and because I gave him a life orb, he takes some extra damage too with every attack. Any retaliation hits from any Pokemon could be a disaster. Minum did just that and hit Kenny with the discharge, taking Kenny to half health, but Aloha was protected from Plusle's luring voice, which was nice. For turn 2, Kenny could safely use Earthquake because he definitely outspeeds, so Plusle and Minum fainted doing what they love, using Helping Hand. Aloha took the Earthquake hit this time around, but he took it pretty well. We also got a chance to set up a Sunny Day for Kenny next turn. Lacey got a bit more serious after all that and sent out Excadrill as the third Pokemon. This guy looked scary at first, since he could be a trouble for Kenny, but Kenny's got 2 speed boosts and will totally outspeed this guy. I had Kenny Terrasilize, use Flare Blitz, and absolutely annihilate Excadrill. Just to be clear, as this battle wraps up with a solid win, I am playing like an absolute madman. The Flare Blitz Life Orb combo from Kenny is super powerful, but it is horrifying to watch your Pokemon's health get that low in a Nuzlocke. Either way, a win's a win, and after some discussion, we were finally invited inside the terrarium. This is where the DLC truly starts, in my opinion. After some chit-chat with Lacey and Director Sarano, we were shown the terrarium for the first time in all of its glory. The terrarium is separated into 4 biomes: the Savanna biome, Coastal biome, Canyon biome, and the Polar biome. Each of these areas looks amazing, and they introduced Pokemon previously unavailable in Scarlet Violet, which is pretty cool. This is where I would have liked to hunt Kenny and Aloha, but alas, I was doomed to spend 16 hours hatching eggs to get them instead. The conversation ended with me being invited to attend my first class in the Coastal biome. Lacey left us to explore a bit, giving us free reign inside the terrarium. And like any good student, I decided to ditch class because I have a problem to solve. I only have 2 Pokemon on my team. If I want any chance of winning the battles that are coming, I'm going to need a full team, which means I'm going to have to hunt 4 more shiny Pokemon. With the entire terrarium available for me to shiny hunt, it's going to be pretty tricky to pick what I want. So I decided that similar to Kenny Aloha, I'll be hunting whatever Pokemon I see first in each area. It's almost perfect. There's 4 Pokemon that I need, and there's 4 areas. The Savanna biome was the first area I stepped foot in when I traveled to the terrarium, so it made sense for me to start there. And as it happened, I remember seeing a certain Pokemon. Being inside the terrarium is a godsend for shiny hunting. Now I can use outbreaks and isolated encounters to hunt, which is way faster than using the Masuda method, and in my opinion, a much more fun way to hunt. This guy was really tricky to spot too. Even though the shiny looks pretty distinct on Cerebi, the shiny in game was tough to spot because of the lighting. I think some of my reactions speak for themselves. Oh baby, is that it? That looks like it. Wait, what? Oh yeah, that's right, that's the wrong color. I gotta look at the shiny again. It took a lot of time running around, but I finally managed to find one that shined. See, is this one shiny? I don't know. Yeah, what the heck? 47 minutes, 50 seconds-ish. Not my fastest. Meet Shazam. To be honest, this guy didn't really impress me when it comes to battling. He's just kind of fast and hits firmly, not hard. I just gave him some hard-hitting moves and kind of moved on to my next hunt. I've still got 3 shinies I need to catch, so it's time to head to the Canyon biome. For the record, this one's my favorite of the 4, so I'm excited to spend some time hunting here. When I first got there, the first Pokemon I saw was Scraggy, so that'll be our target. Just like with the Blitzel hunt, I had trouble finding an outbreak, so I just ended up making a sandwich and got straight into the hunt. I'm glad I did that though, because this happened within minutes. Doesn't hurt to double check if I'm not sure. Oh, ha, look at you! Come back! Come back! New record, anyone? What the heck, man? I've timed pretty much every shiny hunt I've done, and this is by far the fastest I've ever had. It's a shame though. I was hoping to spend some more time here in this biome. Meet Trousers. Scrafty was another Pokemon I found unremarkable when I looked at his stats. He has some good defense, but nothing really impressed me. His coolest attributes were the ability to learn moves like Payback and Fake Out, and his ability was Intimidate, which is pretty neat. Keep in mind that he's another fighting type on my team, which does not help my cause. If my team runs into a flying type right now, I am screwed. That's 2 down and 2 to go, so on to the third area, which is the coastal biome. When I first traveled to that spot, the Pokemon I saw first was Inkay, which is one of the cool ones. I was feeling pretty good about getting Scraggy as fast as I did, but I was reminded pretty quickly about one of the realities of shiny hunting. Sometimes you're blessed with good luck, and other times it's horrendous. This shiny hunt was rough. Even with using outbreaks and getting the odds to 1 in 512, I managed to spend 2 hours swimming with Koraidon. Watching that animation for that long really changed me as a man, and you could tell how broken I was when I found it. Oh, come here, please. So long. Meet Australia. I live in the US, and someone asked me to name a Pokemon after their Australian-themed names, so I thought the upside-down Pokemon was a perfect fit. Malamar is a special Pokemon when you look at what it's capable of. His ability Contrary is awesome. Basically takes all stat changes and reverses them. This is really cool for moves like Superpower, which usually lower attack and their defense after use. Malamar flips that and gets stronger with each attack, making him a real threat and a welcome addition to the team. Last but not least is the Polar Biome. Probably my least favorite biome, but at least it's cooler than the snow areas that are in the main game. This was another hunt I didn't use an outbreak for. Because these guys spawned so close to the central plaza, I could quickly despawn and respawn Pokemon by moving in and out of that area. This hunt ended up being on the good side of the shiny hunting spectrum, and this is what happened in a few minutes. Stop! These are so fast! No. Not you. I'm just gonna take you away from your parents. That's so fast, man. Meet Beartic. I forgot to name him, so let's just call him Subscribe in the edit. This was another guy I didn't really know what to do with because he was also unremarkable. I ended up just maxing out his speed and attack and gave him some powerful moves, so I hoped he'd be useful. I won't dwell too much on my boy Subscribe here. You know how in TV shows or anime you can tell when a character is expendable because they spend little time on him? Yeah, that's what's happening here. That's the 4th Pokemon I need. So the last thing to do was to prep my team, which basically consisted of me feeding them vitamins, nature mints, gathering materials for TMs, buying important held items, and knocking out a random Bonsly that showed up along the way. After all that prep, it's finally time to head back to class and actually make some progress in the story again. I've always found it funny how time works in video games. I've just spent over 2 hours collecting shiny Pokemon and another hour or so prepping my team. Class should 100% be over with, but the story always waits for me, so that's cool. Another thing I found funny was how Lacey asked me if I had trouble finding the place. I mean, yeah, Lacey, it was an ordeal. The class ended up being a lesson on regional forms of Pokemon, and my assignment was to catch an Alolan form of a Pokemon. With that assignment, I quickly found an Alolan Muck, caught it, and showed it to the teacher. He was impressed with me, so class ended there. Carmine gave us a call after though, asking to meet her in the central plaza. I met up with her and she explains how she's been helping Briar, the mad scientist, with her research. I'll introduce that character in the last chapter where this story turned into a special kind of hell for me. Carmine also brags about her Pokemon being a lot stronger than before. Oh dear, now she wants to battle. Usually I'm pretty cocky when a character offers to fight in a Pokemon game, but something tells me this won't be as easy as the last time we fought. Carmine starts off with Mightyena and Toucanon, and I lead with Kenny and Aloha, which is a bit unfortunate because Toucanon's flying, and that would decimate both of my mons. And in another annoying twist, Mightyena has the ability Intimidate, which makes Kenny less effective. My team is also 2 levels below hers, which doesn't help. Because I was doing this battle blind, I decided to have both Kenny and Aloha use Protect on turn 1, just to suss any tricks out. Toucanon used Beak Blast, and Mightyena used Super Fang. After sussing out those moves, and because Kenny and Aloha were still in a bad matchup, I decided to swap into Shazam and Subscribe. On the swap, Toucanon used Beak Blast again, which to my surprise did a huge chunk of damage to Shazam, even though it wasn't very effective. Mightyena spent the turn using Howl, which is scary. For turn 3, I kinda went for a bit of a desperation play. I had Shazam use Wild Charge on Toucanon, and Beartic use Close Combat, hopefully to take out both Pokemon. To my surprise, Toucanon survived with a sliver of health, and unfortunately the recoil damage from Shazam's move would take him out. This challenge is claimed the first of many victims. I'd like to say that it was a noble sacrifice, but Toucanon's still in the field, so it felt like such a waste. On the bright side though, close combat took out Mightyana before he could even attack, which was great. The turn isn't over though, because that bird is still around, and it managed to get a flame charge off on Subscribe, which absolutely melted him. Within one turn, I just lost 2 shiny Pokemon. It's not looking good. A moment of silence, please, for the passing of Shazam, and Subscribe. You know what you have to do. In retaliation, I sent out Trousers and Australia. Carmine sent in her own Scrafty, which was objectively worse than mine because it doesn't have a cool pair of green pants like mine does. It definitely worked out for me too because Scrafty's Intimidate actually raised Australia's attack. If it wasn't obvious at this point, I'll make it crystal clear. I am horrible at Pokemon battles, and this coming turn will make that painfully obvious. Not only did I switch into a fighting type against a flying type, but I had Australia use Rest at full HP, which if you didn't know fails instantly, and I had Trousers use a not very effective payback on Carmine's Scraggy. I made this turn an absolute waste, and my Pokemon paid the ultimate price. Trousers got obliterated by a Beak Blast, and Carmine's Scraggy got a turn to set up with Bulk Up. Not good. For turn 5, I sent out Kenny because I know he can outspeed after one turn of protecting. That sounds like a pretty smart idea, right? Until you realize that I made another brain dead play by having Malamar use Sleep Talk. I don't know. I guess I didn't realize that Rest failed last turn, maybe? With that though, Toucanon further capitalized on my mistakes and used Beak Blast to take out a huge chunk of health from Australia. Scrafty managed to set up another Bulk Up, which is even more terrifying now. It's pretty much do or die at this point, so I had Kenny go all out with close combat, and I also had him Terastallize, so he wouldn't be a fighting type anymore. Scraggy managed to hang on though, which was scary, because 1 or 2 damaging moves on Kenny would be the end of him. Before that retaliation though, you'd be proud of me. Malamar actually got a rest off, which was awesome to see. Looking back in post, I realized how lucky the end of this turn was. Scrafty used a 3rd Bulk Up, which is hilarious, and Kenny managed to avoid the hit from Toucanon, which is awesome. If either of those Pokemon shows damaging moves that turn, there's a good chance one of my mons would have died. Another reason it was really lucky is because this next turn is really easy. Both Kenny and Australia are going to outspeed, so all I have to do is have Kenny use close combat to take out Scrafty, and Malamar to use Superpower to take out Toucanon. Carmine's last Pokemon is Sinistea, which should be pretty easy. Pretty similar to the first battle, Kenny can use Flare Blitz and just absolutely decimate Sinistea. Sinistea will Terastallize, but it doesn't matter. Even after all those mistakes, I still managed to squeeze a win out. Losing Trousers, Shazam, and Subscribe definitely hurt. Those guys took a lot of work to get, and they didn't even make it past their first battle. I don't think Carmine understood what challenge I was putting myself through, since she moved on like nothing important happened, and I didn't just lose 3 shiny Pokemon. Instead, she asks if I've seen Kiki yet. Speaking of the guy, both Carmine and I spot him near the Central Plaza, and we get our first glimpse of him after a while. Kieran has gone full edge. Instead of being a cute, innocent kid that he was from the Teal Mask, I've managed to turn this guy into a power-hungry monster. If it wasn't clear, I am 100% the villain of this story. After Kieran passes through, we get a chance to meet Drayton, one of the newest characters. Drayton asks if I'm friends with Kieran, and like any good bully, I told him of course. After talking, Drayton has a hunch that I can knock Kieran down a pick or 2, so he invites me to join the League Club. This is a club that has formed their own Pokemon battle ranking system within the Academy, the Blueberry League. Members battle each other to train and climb the ranks, and the top 4 trainers are the Blueberry League Elite 4, which Drayton is one of. The conversation ends with him asking me out on a lunch date, which is flattering, but I have to decline because I have some problems I need to solve. Before I do anything else, I'll need to hunt 3 more shiny Pokemon to replace the ones I just lost. This time around, instead of hunting the first Pokemon I see in each area, I decided to make a wheel to decide my targets. The wheel chose Magmortar, Girafarig, and Rufflet, so let's get going. Going forward, I'm going to use this method to pick Pokemon as replacements for my team. I'm also going to remove each evolutionary line from the wheel as I go to make sure that I don't have any duplicates. Up first was the Magmortar hunt. I set off to the Torchlit Labyrinth in the coastal biome and made a fire sandwich to do some isolated encounter hunting. This area was confusing to navigate, hence the name, but when you run in that area for hours, you get a pretty good feel for the layout. One thing caught my eye though as I was running around. That's a goofy looking... What is that? Why does he look so wrong? It's not shiny, it just looks goofy. Oh heck, man. After all that excitement, it wasn't too long before I saw the shiny that I wanted. Yes! That's the one. Meet Juicy Jaw. It's a name I hate saying out loud, but it does make sense when you look at this guy. He's a cool Pokemon, but unfortunately, I already have a Superstar Fire type on my team in Kenny, so I just gave him a variety of special attacking moves and moved on. Next up was Girafarig. I recall from hunting Blitzel that this guy spawns in the Savannah biome, so I ended up doing an isolated encounter hunt again with the Psychic Sandwich and hunted away. This one turned out to be pretty straightforward, but it took longer than expected. After about an hour of hunting, this happened. Oh, praise be. Quick ball right off the bat.
Pure sacrilege.
Meet Stretch. He's got some pretty good special attack and HP, and an interesting ability in Armor Tail. All I did here was give him some moves I thought would be good, and an Assault Vest to buff his defenses. The only other thing of note is that he's my first marked shiny. He's got the Sleepy Time mark, which is cool. For my last Pokemon, I'll be hunting Braviary, and I don't have to travel too far to find him. He also spawns in the Savannah biome, and I spotted him during my previous hunts. You know the drill by now. I'll make a flying sandwich, and the shiny should show up at some point. In this case, it happened pretty quickly.
Oh, is that one? Yeah! That's awesome.
Meet Icarus. I have a soft spot in my heart for flying type Pokemon, and this guy is no exception. It's one of my favorites for sure. To build him though, I just gave him some powerful stab moves and moved on. This last hunt gave us a full team, so we can finally get back to the story. After putting off Drayton, I actually ended up going on that lunch date with him, where he explained that he wants me to become Blueberry League champion. He thinks it would be interesting if an exchange student shows up and beats everyone. You know, it is subtle at times, but he clearly wants us to beat Kieran too. He definitely cares about his group of friends, and he believes that me becoming champion will help ease some of the tensions in the group. Speaking of the group, the entire gang strolls in, the rest of the Elite Four and Champion Kieran. This is the first time Kieran has seen us, and he was flabbergasted by my presence. For good reason. I've definitely caused some trauma for him in the past, and just look at the face I was making. After some discussion, the decision to have me join the league went to a vote, since I'm an outsider and an exchange student. The rule followers Lacey and Amarys said no, while Crispin and Drayton are all for it. That left the tiebreaker to Kieran. This didn't look like too hard of a decision for him, since he went full Gojo and was like, nah, I'd win. With his blessing to join the league though, the last thing to do was officially sign up. Because I got recommendations from the director and several Elite Four members, I had the privilege to start with the Elite Four challenge. The plan is to start with the lowest ranked Elite Four, Crispin, and work my way up to the highest, Drayton. As an aside, this is the part of the story that made me nervous to even decide to take on this challenge. I heard many rumors during the pre-release that these kids were no pushovers, and the fact that I struggled so much with Carmine's battle made me even more nervous. I am way too deep to turn back now though, so all I can do now is trust my prep and take on the first member. Each of the Elite Four members has a trial, and with the hype going around about the difficulty of these battles, I'd expect these trials to be no joke. Oh, I just have to make a spicy sandwich. That's pretty straightforward. After some interactions, trades, and battles, I made the perfect sandwich for Crispin. He seemed pretty perplexed by the open-faced sandwich, but him and his 6-bag mortar seemed to enjoy it. After approving my cooking, he allowed me to face him in battle. It's pretty hard to explain how I was feeling at this point. I think this is one of the most emotional stories I've seen in a Pokemon game, and to top it off, I am terrified. You have to realize I've spent 20 hours to get to this point, and all I've heard about online was the difficulty of these coming battles. I've made it clear that I'm not the best battler either, so to say I was nervous was an understatement. All that doesn't matter now though. All that's left to do is give this my best shot. Crispin starts off with a Heat Rotom and a Talonflame, and I decided to lead off with Juicy Jaw and Australia. For turn 1, I had Juicy Jaw go for a Thunderbolt on Talonflame and hoped that'd be enough to take it out. I also tried to learn from my mistakes and had Australia use Superpower right away. If I get multiple buffs off with Australia, he can be a huge threat and maybe even win this match for me. Talonflame outsped me though and hit Australia for a huge Brave Bird, which did a lot of damage. Rotom also outsped my team and got a Will-O-Wisp buff on Australia. That's really unfortunate because that'll hinder Australia's attack. Thankfully though, Juicy Jaw's Thunderbolt managed to take out Talonflame, but Australia's Superpower did next to nothing because of the burn. Even though I've got some problems in this battle, turn 1, it's good to have 1 out of 6 of Crispin's Pokemon down. For turn 2, Crispin sent in Executor. I had a decision to make here. Unfortunately, I put a Choice Specs on Juicy Jaw, which meant that he was locked into Thunderbolt, and that's not very effective on both targets. After some thought, I made the questionable decision to switch into Aloha from Juicy Jaw. It was a bit of a gamble, but I didn't think he'd take a Fire-type move, and I didn't think Executor could take him out. Aloha had some stall moves like Protect, but more importantly, he knew Sleep Powder, which I thought would be useful in this situation. It was also time this turn for Australia to use Rest, because he would heal the burn and heal up a lot of the damage he just took. Seeing the opening, Rotom went for a Hex on Australia, which took him to a pretty dangerously low amount of health, but he barely hung on. Executor also had an opening to work with that turn, but decided to use Solar Beam instead, which made me look like a genius for swapping out this turn. The last important thing to happen that turn was Australia actually woke up on his own. He does know Sleep Talk, but by waking up I have the chance to use whatever move I want, even another Rest if I need it. Thanks Australia, you're the best. With Aloha safely in the fight, I had him go for a Sleep Powder on Rotom, which was the Pokemon I was fearing the most at the time. My experience in battling showed again though, and I had Australia go for Foul Play when I probably should have done a Superpower. I thought Australia's stat boosts would work with Foul Play at the time, but the move only cares about the opponent's attack stats and boosts, so it won't do too much damage even though it's super effective. Before my Pokemon got to do anything though, Rotom got off an Overheat, which is a pretty scary move for Aloha. It's basically a guaranteed one-hit KO for him. I got really lucky though, and Aloha avoided that attack for me. His Sleep Powder move was also successful, which is awesome. One of these days my luck in battle battling will wear off, but for now I'm going to keep enjoying it. As expected, Foul Play did less than half health to Executor, and Solar Beam finally hit Australia this turn, which ended up doing less than half because he's an absolute unit. For turn 4, Aloha went for Protect, and Australia decided to focus on Rotom by using Superpower. The scary Rotom stayed asleep this turn, and Australia safely got a Superpower off on him, taking him to about half health. Executor went for an attack on Aloha, but since he was protected, nothing happened there. At this point, Aloha did his job. He can't protect again, and he can't use Sleep Powder on Executor. So I switched him back into Juicy Jaw, thinking I could take an attack from either Executor or Rotom if he woke up. The plan for Australia is to just keep spamming Superpower to get even more buffs. Executor started off the turn with Protect, but it didn't really matter because it didn't target him this turn, and I finally managed to take out Rotom, who took the brunt of a huge Superpower. 2 down, 4 to go. For turn 6, Crispin sent in Camerupt, a very unassuming Pokemon, but also a very dangerous one. This time, Juicy Jaw used Psychic because I didn't want to lock him into a Fire-type move, and Australia was going to keep rolling with those superpowers. Juicy Jaw targeted Executor, even though it's a not very effective move, because I had 100% confidence that Australia could take out Camerupt. Australia has so many buffs, there's no way that this won't take him out. Oh god, he's still alive. Executor used Leech Seed, which wasn't bad, but it's annoying. And because Camerupt lived, it got an Earth Power off on Juicy Jaw, which absolutely decimated him. That was unfortunate. With that loss, I decided it was finally time to send in Kenny the closer. I figured with one speed boost and a protect, he could guarantee outspeed anything and probably take out the rest of Crispin's team. I also knew Australia was faster than Camerupt at the time, so I used Superpower to take him out. I looked like a real genius too when Executor used Psyshock on the protected Kenny. Up next, Crispin sent in one of his remaining 3 Pokemon, his own Magmortar. It was at this point of the battle that I realized I made another mistake. I didn't give Australia any PP ups for Superpower, so now that he's out, I can't use that move anymore. I'll have to rely on his only attacking move left, Foul Play. For now though, I had him use Rest just because he was on low health. I decided it was finally time to get rid of that Executor, so I had Blaziken use Flare Blades and hopefully take him out. He wasn't ready to go though because he used a Protect to my surprise. It shouldn't have been a surprise because I already knew he had that move, but oh well. My genius scares me sometimes. Funny enough though, someone was looking out for me and Australia woke up from his sleep again. What are the odds of that happening twice in one battle? After that, it was finally time to start closing things out. I had Kenny go for a close combat on Magmortar, and Australia was forced to use Foul Play on Executor. Magmortar got obliterated as planned, but Executor did not. Executor does know Psyshock, which would be horrible for Kenny, but instead he went for a Solar Beam on Australia, which didn't do too much damage. Crispin finally sent out his last Pokemon, his own Blaziken. I'm noticing a pattern here. This is the 3rd time an opponent of mine has had the same Pokemon as me. I don't appreciate being copied. For this turn, I decided to have Kenny use Flare Blitz on Executor, while Australia would use Foul Play on Blaziken. I knew Kenny would outspeed Executor, so I wasn't worried about him, but this Blaziken could spell disaster for either of my Pokemon. After Terastallizing, this guy could do some serious damage. Luckily for me though, Blaziken went for a Shadow Claw on Australia, which did absolutely nothing because of his stat boost. Keep in mind though that a crit could have easily killed Australia too, so I think it's fair to say I got with murdered this time. At this point though, it's basically curtains. My Kenny will totally outspeed his Blaziken, so one final close combat was all it took to give me my first Elite Four victory. Finishing this battle with only 1 loss was an absolute relief, and I really impressed myself. I expected this to be way worse, but it definitely could have been when you consider how lucky I got at some spots. After the contest was over, both Drayton and Crispin congratulated me on my win. Going back to the story, the vibe I got from them both is that they want things to go back to normal in Blueberry Academy, and they think I can help by becoming champion. Believe me, I'll try my best, but I got some work to do first. I gotta find my next Pokemon. After consulting the wheel, and Polion became my target, so that's what I went to Shiny Hunt. This guy took a lot longer to get than I expected. In order to have starter Pokemon like Piplup spawn in the wild, you need to have some BBQ points to unlock them. A word of warning for those of you that haven't done this yet, do not do this on your own. It took me so long to get the points I needed just by doing this stuff on my own. I spent nearly 2 hours catching random Pokemon and taking random photos. Once I had them available though, all I had to do was reset for an outbreak and Shiny Hunt like normal. After almost 3 hours, if you include the time to get the barbecue points, this happened.
Yes! It's like an hour and a half, 2 hours. I don't even know. Lost track.
Meeting Polion. This is another Pokemon I forgot to nickname, so you already know this guy's gonna go all the way to the end of the story. This is another one of my favorite Mons though. I have a lot of memories of playing with him in Gen 4, and for this challenge, I just gave him some moves like Stealth Rock and Aqua Jet to hopefully be useful. I'll find out pretty quickly just how useful he is, since it's time to challenge the second member of the Elite Four. I was feeling pretty cocky after beating Crispin with only one loss. I went bright-eyed and bushy-tailed into the next battle. This time around, we'll be facing Amarys, who specializes in steel types. But first, her trial, which was way more fun than Crispin's. I'll take this flying time trial over the complicated mess that was the sandwich-making trial any day. Also, as an aside, this is an amazing feature to have, but I'm pretty disappointed that it's unlocked literally at the end of the game. Having unlimited flight would have made exploring and traveling so much more fun, but instead we're stuck with a Pokemon that can only glide 10 feet before plummeting to the ground. If you think about it too, it's also a paywalled feature. I don't think you can do this without the DLC. It's definitely a shame, but I completed the trial regardless and earned my right to face Amarys. Just like with Crispin's battle, I was feeling pretty nervous, but having one win under my belt definitely gave me some confidence. Even though the trial that came before this was easy, I got the feeling that the coming battle's difficulty would more than make up for it. This is definitely one of those moments where I wondered what I was doing with my life, since I'm a full day's worth of playtime into this DLC, but there's no backing down now. I have to have confidence in myself and trust that I've done everything I can to win this fight. She starts off with Dugtrio and Skarmory, while I decided to lead off with the fresh new recruit Empoleon and the now grizzled veteran Australia. The turn 1 strategy was pretty basic. Empoleon was going to start off by setting up a Stealth Rock, and Australia was going to get the superpower train rolling. He was incredibly useful in the last battle, so I plan to keep using the same strategy here, especially since fighting moves are a great matchup for Steel type. Dugtrio ended up being the fastest Pokemon on the field though, and started off with an Earthquake, which is a super strong attack that nearly knocked out Empoleon in one hit. Australia took the hit well and retaliated. It's basically guaranteed that Superpower will knock out Dugtrio though, since his defenses are so low. A Focus Sash, really? I should have expected something like this. Skarmory went next and set up his own Stealth Rock at the same time as Empoleon, so for the rest of the battle, Pokemon on both sides will be taking some bonus hazard damage on swap in. For turn 2, the writing was kinda on the wall, and I didn't think Empoleon would be any more use this battle. He did his job by setting up Stealth Rocks, and swapping Pokemon with hazards out didn't make much sense either. Since I taught him the priority move Aqua Jet, I decided to guaranteed take out Dugtrio and pray on a small chance that he'd survive the turn against Skarmory. I had less to think about with Australia's strategy. He kept rolling with those superpowers. Empoleon managed to take out Dugtrio as predicted, but Australia's superpower didn't do as much damage as I thought it'd do. My gamble didn't pay off either, and Empoleon got squished to death by Skarmory's body press. Isn't it fun to lose a shiny you literally just caught? To be fair, I fit in as many death flags as I could when I introduced this guy, so it shouldn't have been a surprise. For turn 3, I sent out Stretch, and Amarys sent out Skizzer. I sent out Stretch simply because he knows Thunderbolt, and I thought it'd be a great move to use against Skarmory to hopefully take it out. You know the drill for Australia. Use superpower to keep those buffs rolling, and I'll be able to end this battle in no time. Except that's not what I did at all. For some reason I literally can't explain, I thought it was a genius idea to terrestrialize Australia into a dark type and then use Foul Play into Skizzer. I went through it earlier, but Foul Play only cares about your opponent's attack stats and doesn't care how many times your own attack stat was boosted. Sometimes it takes me way too long to learn from my mistakes. It's not the end of the world though. I mean, Skizzer's got a high attack, and with the 2x bonus from being Terra Dark, this does have a chance to take it out. Uh-oh. That's not good. Stretch had a chance to move next though, and as planned, Thunderbolt took out Skarmory. But because Skizzer lived, he retaliated with a Pounce and deleted Stretch in one attack. Losing a second Pokemon here removed every ounce of confidence I had going into this battle. I am not going to be in a good spot if I keep trading Pokemon one for one here. For turn 4, I sent out Icarus, and Amarys sent out her own Empoleon. I do not appreciate being copied. This time, I knew both Australia and Icarus would outspeed Amarys' Pokemon, so I had Icarus use Close Combat on Skizzer, and Australia made the correct choice this turn to use Superpower on Empoleon. With all the buffs Australia has at this point, Superpower demolished the Empoleon just as fast as I lost my own, and Icarus finished off Skizzer handily, making this a great turn. Amarys only has 2 Pokemon left, so if I can repeat this turn, I'll be taking a victory lap soon. And those last 2 Pokemon are Runecliss and Metagross. Runecliss is going to be one tough customer since it's got a lot of high defenses, so I decided to have Icarus use Brave Bird on it to hopefully deal a lot of damage. It's definitely an all-in play because he probably won't be able to take any retaliation hits and live to tell the tale. Australia, with as many boosts as he has, should have no trouble take out Metagross with a superpower. So imagine my surprise editing this in post when I saw myself in the past use Foul Play again. When will I learn? I'm so frustrated with myself. To be fair, it ended up doing a good chunk of damage, but Metagross lived to tell another tale, and Brave Bird didn't do nearly as much damage as I wanted it to do. With Metagross alive, it was basically over for Icarus, since it only took 1 Ice Punch to finish him off. This is the 3rd shiny I've lost this battle, and I think it was finally time for me to pay the price for being lucky and dumb in my previous battles. Runecliss still had had a move left in the turn, and he hit me with a doozy. Trick Room. I don't think I can explain well enough how much of a problem this is. All my remaining Pokemon, especially Kenny the Closer, rely on hard-hitting moves and hitting fast without taking too much damage themselves. Trick Room makes it impossible, since the slowest Pokemon will go first, putting me and my Pokemon in a really tough spot. All that said, I sent out Aloha for a turn with the hopes of stalling with moves like Sleep Powder and Protect until that Trick Room wore off. Because I think Australia can take out Metagross this turn, I had Aloha go for Sleep Powder on Runecliff, and Australia try Superpower to hopefully KO Metagross. This time Metagross got to go first though, and he used Ice Punch on Aloha, who barely survived. Aloha was next, and it actually managed to hit the Sleep Powder, putting Runecliff out of commission before it could do any more damage to my team. To close out the turn, Australia finally finished Metagross. I don't think I'd be in this situation if I did that a turn ago. For turn 7, Aloha stalled with the move Protect, while Australia went for the super effective Foul Play. In a scary twist though, Runecliff woke up right away and used Psychic on the protected Aloha, which was a surprise. Foul Play ended up doing some good damage, but not quite enough to finish the job. For turn 8, now that Runecliff is awake, I had Aloha go for another Sleep Powder. I didn't want to risk another Protect, and swapping into Kenny felt like a death sentence for him. Australia continued to use the super effective Foul Play. Unfortunately, with that Trick Room still up, Runecliff went first and took out Aloha. This one hurt. It was hard to lose someone that's been with me for so long, especially since I felt like I could have been avoided. I definitely made some mistakes this battle, and maybe if I didn't do those, Aloha would still be around. To finish things off, I sent in my last Pokemon, Kenny. Luckily, he knows Protect, so that's what he went for. Australia should be able to take any stray hits from Runecliff and finish him off this turn with an attacking move. In a very bittersweet ending, I managed to get my second Elite Four win by the skin of my teeth. This battle was much more along the lines of what I expected from these Elite Four battles. This was definitely a challenge, and I feel great knowing that I managed to win, but it hurt knowing that I lost 4 shiny Pokemon. On a different note, in regards to the story, it became pretty clear that Amarys can come across as super cold and calculating, but it's obvious that she cares a lot about her friends, especially Kieran. Speaking of him, he decided to show up and see how my battles were going. He wanted to make sure I was winning because he was itching at the chance to battle me so he could prove just how strong he's become. I was itching at the chance too because I'd love to put him in his place, but I've got some problems to solve after this recent massacre. I managed to lose Empoleon, Stretch, Icarus, and Aloha in this battle. I need to do some work to replace them with some fresh new shiny recruits before the next Elite Four challenge. So it's back to the wheel, and my first target ended up being a Pyroar. This guy was way trickier to get a hold of than I thought it would be. Even using Outbreaks, it became very clear that something was horribly wrong. Even with the Outbreak symbol on the map, no Pokemon would spawn when I was there. After consulting you, it turns out that they only spawn at night, which made it trickier to hunt this guy. Thank you, by the way. I don't know how I'd make it without you guys. Even after learning that though, it took me nearly 3 hours to find this guy.
Oh my gosh. Finally. Yes!
Meet Pyroar. You may be noticing a theme. I keep forgetting to nickname a lot of the Pokemon, especially the ones that don't really excite me. I really don't need another fire type because I already have Kenny. He learned some cool moves like Will-O-Wisp and Taunt, so I just gave him those and moved on to the next hunt. The next Pokemon the wheel decided on was Poltegeist. A while ago, I shiny hunted an authentic version of these guys, so I'm pretty familiar with how painful he can be to hunt. The absolute worst part about these guys is their size. They are so small, and it's really tricky to see this shiny. I even have the luxury of playing full screen on my computer monitor while I record, and I'm still straining my neck trying to find this guy. My experience must have paid off though, because I didn't spend too long looking for him.
Is that the one? Oh, yes. I don't care a whole lot, so I'm gonna go for the quick ball.
Meet Phony. If the name didn't give it away, it's a phony form, not an authentic one, in case you were curious. This guy is pretty cool because you can learn the moves Shell Smash and Stored Power. With the right setup, this guy can be a real threat and take out a lot of Pokemon. He is another glass cannon though, which is kind of concerning. It'll probably be fine, so let's go on to the next hunt. The third shiny Pokemon ended up being a new one, Archelodon. This hunt was an absolute cakewalk after my eyes were so strained from hunting Citispies. There's even a spot where you can isolate spawn them, so basically I made a sandwich, and within a few minutes this happened.
Hell yeah. Yes. Like a good easy one.
Meet Archelodon. I know what you're thinking, but I decided to not nickname this guy because I still have to learn what his name is. There's a lot to like about this guy. He's got some monster stats, and he learned some really powerful moves that would be a great addition to this team. Lacey, the Fairy type Elite Four member, is coming up next, so having a solid Steel type on the team would be so useful. The last hunt ended up being Incineroar, another shiny starter that requires some barbecue points to unlock. Lucky for me though, I spent enough time during the Empoleon hunt to collect enough points to unlock Litten in the Canyon biome right away. Even still, I had a bear of a time getting this guy. I went from mountaintop to find a good hunting spot for this guy, and after about 40 minutes, this happened.
A white thing. I saw a white thing. I thought it was an item. It's just a cat. There he is.
There we go. Meet Incineroar, another Pokemon I forgot to nickname because at this point I was sick of fire types. I just gave him some useful moves like Knock Off, Helping Hand, and Fake Out and moved on. If I run into something that's super effective on fire types, I'm screwed. With that last hunt though, I have a full team now, and it's finally time to take on the third member of the Elite Four. Lacey is up next, and she specializes in fairy types. Before we start though, I do have an embarrassing confession to make. I'm still learning how the fairy type works, even though they introduced it 10 years ago. I had to do a lot of research to be as confident as possible going into this battle. Believe me when I say I have a plan, even though I'm going in blind. Things will probably be fine. I just hope they don't introduce any new types in this game. I don't think my brain can take it. Before the battle though, I did have to pass the trial, which was a Pokemon quiz. It wasn't too much of a challenge since I managed to get all the questions right, from the Pikachu Electricity Sacks question to the Minior Shuffle. These Elite Trials were never the hard part though, they were always a warm-up for the challenge to come. Just like the previous two battles, I was nervous, but that should go without saying. Part of that feeling was from the fact that I'm now 30 hours into this DLC, and I could easily lose a ton of work here. But another part was that I'm now playing with some brand new teammates in a completely blind battle against a type I am not an expert on. It's a bit comforting knowing that I have some veterans like Australia and Kenny in reserve, but the 4 rookies will have no idea what hit them, and I really haven't battle tested them either. There is a lot of uncertainty at the moment, but as always, I've come way too far to turn back. It's time to take on the best girl Lacey and show her what I got. Lacey starts off with a Granbull and a Whimsicott, and my plan was to lead with Phony and Incineroar. The idea with Incineroar was to use his Intimidate ability right away to lower Lacey's Pokemon's attacks. But great minds think alike. Lacey's Granbull had the same ability, so everyone's starting off with their attacks lowered. I don't appreciate being copied. Another reason I led with Incineroar was because he can learn the move Fake Out. I had him use that on Whimsicott to make him flinch and help Phony set up. Phony did just that and used Shell Smash. The grand plan here is that next turn, Phony can use Stored Power, which is a move that increases in power for each stat boost it has. If I can keep Phony alive, he can become a huge threat. I'll just have to do my best to protect him from any retaliation hits because he's the definition of a glass cannon right now. After the Fake Out hit and Phony set up, it was Lacey's turn to move, and Granbull ended up using the super effective Stomping Tantrum on Incineroar, which scared me a bit. For turn 2, I took a bit of a gamble. I thought that even though Incineroar's attack was lowered with Intimidate, Flare Blitz would still take out Whimsicott, so that's what I went for. And now that Phony's all set up, it was time to capitalize and have him use Stored Power to deal a huge amount of damage. Unfortunately, Whimsicott went first and threw a huge wrench into my plan by setting up a light screen, which will hinder Phony's coming attack. I ended up losing the gamble, and both Whimsicott and Granbull survived the attacks. In retaliation, Granbull used another Stomping Tantrum to bulldoze Incineroar and take him out. This is not the start I was looking for this battle. I know I made fun of Incineroar a bit, but it still hurts to lose a member of the team here. For turn 3, I sent in Pyroar. I was pretty confident my team would outspeed, so Pyroar used Flamethrower to hopefully take out Whimsicott, and Phony would continue to use Store Power to try and finish off Granbull. Phony managed to do his job and took out Granbull, but before my Pyroar could attack, Whimsicott used Moonblast on Phony to take him to about half health. The turn ended on a good note though, since Pyroar took out Whimsicott. That was a much needed win after last turn, so from here it's 2 down, 4 to go. Up next, Lacey sends in Slowbro and Primarina, which is not what I wanted to see. Remember when I said I'd be screwed if I ran into a water type? Yeah, this is not ideal. All that said, I was pretty confident my Pokemon would still outspeed, and I could take out Primarina. So I had Pyroar use Hyper Voice, and Phony use Stored Power on Primarina. I must have forgotten about the light screen though, because Pyroar's Hyper Voice did next to nothing, and Stored Power wasn't enough to finish the job. In a sad turn of events, off of my mistake, Primarina used Shadow Ball in retaliation to send Phony straight to the Shadow Realm. To be honest, I didn't think Phony was going to be the one to bite the dust here. I was kind of banking on him to sweep this battle for me. His loss was a wake-up call to start taking things a bit more seriously and to lock in. The turn's not over though, because Slowbro finished it off with a Psychic on Pyroar, who thanks to a miracle managed to live. For turn 5, I decided it was time to set in the veteran Australia. I wanted to save Arachidon and Kenny for later in the fight, and I had confidence that he could survive a hit or two as well as take out a few Pokemon with Foul Play. The plan for Pyroar was to use Hyper Voice again, and I hoped that the combination of those two moves would take out a Pokemon. Unfortunately, that wasn't enough, and Australia's Foul Play took down Slowbro to a sliver of health. In retaliation for my attacks, Primarina used Hyper Voice to ultimately take out Pyroar. This is my 3rd loss this battle, and with Lacey still having 4 Pokemon left, I am not in a good spot. I'm gonna have to put something together here if I want any chance of winning. For For turn 6, I didn't want to send in Kenny yet, so I sent in Arachlodon instead. While he is a dragon type, which bodes pretty poorly against fairy types, I did make him a Terra Steel type to eliminate that weakness and turn into a strength and prep for this battle. I had him go for a Terra Flash Cannon right off the bat, which in my mind was a slam dunk to finish off Primera. The plan for Australia was to continue using Foul Play, which based on the damage from last turn should take out Slowbro. Australia is now the fastest on the field, so he did what he had to do. Foul Play managed to take out Slowbro before it could do any more damage to me. In a sick twist though, Primera lived through the Flash Cannon, which I couldn't believe happened. The next move from Primera was a hard one to watch, since it used Moonblast to take out Australia. Honestly, this one left me sick to my stomach. Australia was one of my favorites, and he's gotten me through a lot. I thought I'd be able to superpower my way through the entire DLC, but I guess that's not happening. Rest in peace, Australia. With that horrible loss, it's time to send out my last Pokemon, because I got a battle to win. Kenny, the closer, makes its way in, while Lacey decided on sending in Alcremie. If being down 4 Pokemon isn't scary enough, here's why I'm scared to have Kenny out now. Kenny has a Life Orb and loves using moves that inflict recoil damage, like Flare Blitz. With Lacey still having 4 Pokemon left, Kenny is almost guaranteed to take some damage while trying to close out the battle. I just hope that he can live up to his namesake and finish things off without dying himself. In terms of battling, this turn was pretty simple. Now that Arachlodon is Terastallized, the plan was to continue to have him use super effective Flash Cannons, and he was going to use it on Alcremie this turn. I also know that Kenny's the fastest on the field, so I had him use Flare Blitz to guarantee take out Primera. That did come to fruition, and Primera finally fell, but Arachlodon's Flash Cannon wasn't enough to take out Alcremie. This is what I was worried about. With Alcremie alive, she's got a chance to inflict some pain on Kenny. Any significant hits could be a disaster. Unfortunately, that's what happened, and Alcremie used Alluring Voice, but Kenny took it like a champ, so he lives on to fight to the next turn. With that, it's down to the last 2 Pokemon for both of us. Lacey sent out Excadrill in an effort to finish us off. Just like with the first battle against Lacey, I was pretty scared to see this guy, since he's got guaranteed super effective moves on Kenny and Arachlodon. I know I can outspeed him, but the question becomes, can I take him out in one hit before he can deal damage back? Kenny was going to give everything else he had, so he's going to use Flare Blitz on Excadrill. I'm pretty much banking on this being a one-hit KO. Arachlodon was to keep doing what he was doing, and finish off Alcremie with a Flash Cannon. In a nail-biting finish, even though Excadrill terastallized into a fairy type, Kenny took it out and was brought down to a sliver of health. Very reminiscent of our first battle against Lacey. Flash Cannon destroyed Alcremie too, giving me my 3rd Elite Four victory. Is it just me, or are these battles getting way harder? I said the last Elite Four battle was bittersweet, but this one feels even worse. I managed to get the win here, but it felt like it was such a slim margin. I also lost 4 Pokemon here. If we're being real, I could live with the loss of Incineroar and Pyroar, but Phony and especially Australia's death hit me pretty hard. Those 2 were strong Pokemon. Australia in particular was a powerhouse that got me through a lot. This will be a tough one to recover from. It's also tough when Lacey acts like this was just a normal, cute Pokemon contest. I'm over here sweating and having Pokemon lose their lives in battles to the death, but she's all smiley and happy and calling my Pokemon cute. She does have a way with words though, and after some discussion, I decided to take a victory photo with her. Behind that smile is pure pain. On the story front though, Drayton has a word with us after the battle, which seems to be a tradition by now. He reminds us that he's the 4th member of the Elite Four and wants us to take our time getting ready, which I absolutely will do. I have to find 4 new team members to replace the ones I just lost, so it's back to shiny hunting with the wheel to find our targets. First on the list is Chansey. For this hunt, other than Kenny having an existential crisis, nothing really noteworthy happened. I found an outbreak, knocked out 60 Pokemon, and made a sandwich and hunted like normal. Within about 30 minutes, I managed to find what I was looking for.
There he is. He looks so sick. Oh, come back! Don't run away. Forgot they do that. There we go. Finally.
Meet Joy. This is one of my favorite Pokemon simply because of how much HP it has and how much experience you can get when you beat it. I have memories of battling level 100 Blissies to get my Pokemon to level 100 in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. For battling though, this guy's pretty interesting. It has the ability Serene Grace, which makes additional effects like Freeze, Burn, and Paralysis more common, so I gave him those moves as well as an Expert Belt to make him as useful as possible. Moving on, the wheel decided that Golem would be my next hunt. This shiny is super easy to spot, and compared to some of my other hunts, it's a pretty easy one to hunt. Lots of Geodudes spawn in the canyon biome, so I started off by making a rock sandwich and running around near the central plaza. After about 30 minutes, that didn't seem to work, so I went back to old reliable, outbreak hunting. I don't know why I strayed from methods that work, because this happened in a few minutes.
Yes. I'm not a huge fan of him, so I'm gonna go for the quick ball. before any explosion shenanigans might happen.
Meet Magnet. There's not much to say about this guy. Golem isn't exactly a powerhouse Pokemon, nor is it an exceptional shiny. Nothing really excited me about him, so I just gave him some moves I thought would be useful and moved on to the next hunt. Seviper was up next, and boy oh boy was this Pokemon a menace. I rarely get frustrated on shiny hunts, but this guy took such an absurd amount of time to spawn, I made an exception. I thought that because the Pokemon was large and easy to spot, this hunt would be a breeze, but the RNG gods had other plans for me. RNG can give, but it can also take, and it took everything from me during this hunt. After about an hour and a half, this happened.
Is that it? Oh my god. Such an absurd amount of time. I just throw a Master Ball. Why not?
Meet Danger Noodle. I ended up getting so frustrated in this hunt that I just threw a Master Ball to get it over with. To be fair though, I think the colors match, so I'm alright with it. On the battle side, this guy isn't very impressive either. I gave it moves that I thought would be useful against dragon types like Ice Fang, Protect, and Toxic, and moved on to the next hunt. So far, my team isn't looking great, especially since I have probably the hardest Elite Four members battle ahead of me. I'd like to get something a little more powerful before facing them, but we'll see. The wheel was not on my side though, since my next hunt ended up being Ivysaur. It's not exactly a super competitive Pokemon, and on top of that, I need to get some more barbecue points to unlock this guy. This time around, I learned from my mistakes and found some friends online to speed up the process of getting points, but I ended up spending a lot of time here regardless. Another word of advice, if you can, get into a voice call. A lot of these challenges become way easier if you can communicate, especially taking photos with each other. I also got sidetracked with the item pitter, which is a great way to get some fancy Pokeballs, and I was looking to replace the Master Ball I just used. I ended up spending hours not doing any shiny hunting, just prep. On my way back to the Bulbasaur hunt, I ended up seeing something remarkably frustrating.
Son of a... You... Oh, I can't believe I looked for you for 2 hours and you just show up out of the blue like that. It's so rude.
I don't swear often, but after spending forever looking for this guy to show up randomly like that, I was so frustrated. I think it was justified. After that event, it was time to settle in and find Bulbasaur on top of the mountain in the coastal biome. And after about 2 hours, if you include the time I spent doing barbecues and printing items, this happened.
Yeah! Oh. It's one of the nicest hunts. It's so refreshing after going for so long. Thank you.
Meet Grenion. I like green onions, and that's what Bulbasaur looks like to me, so here we are. On the battling side, this guy doesn't give me much confidence going into the Drayton fight. I didn't really know what to do with this guy, so I played into his strengths. I gave him some powerful grass and poison moves, as well as Sunny Day to buff some members of my team, like Kenny. One other noteworthy thing happened when I was catching Grenion here. I don't know if you caught it, but something caught my eye in the corner of the screen earlier.
Is that a shiny behind the the screen? Hang on. Skip. Panic. Like it's just lighting. No! It looks like a different color. Unbelievable. What the heck, man?
With all that shiny hunting down, it's time to take our freshman recruits and challenge the final member of the Elite Four. Drayton has been our biggest fan in this story. He's always rooting for us to win in the Blueberry League, but the time has come for us to challenge him. He specializes in Dragon-type Pokemon, but first, I have to take on his trial. Drayton's trial is Terrarium-only Pokemon battles, which means that you can only battle his minions with Pokemon caught inside the Terrarium. I imagine this would have been difficult if I played through the entire DLC with my normal overleveled Paldean team, but because I'm doing this Nuzlocke, I already met the criteria to start the trial because I just spent hours hunting here. The only Pokemon that didn't make the cut is Kenny the Closer, since I hatched him outside the Terrarium. I was a bit nervous taking him out of the team for a bit, but I pressed on. The first battle was against a Rampardos and a Bastion, but Grenion and Joy made quick work of them. The second battle was against a Sandslash and Dugong. Even though I forgot to heal my team between battles, which made me a bit nervous, I managed to melt through a Pokemon with no problem. The third and last battle was against a Zebstrika and a Magnezone. These guys were a bit tougher, so I had to do some swapping to protect my teammates, but I managed to clear the trial with no problems. I should have expected that though, because time and time again, these trials were never the hard part. It's always the Elite Four battle that's the real challenge. Just like the Elite Four battles that came before this, I was nervous, but this time felt different. Maybe it's because Drayton is the final member of the Elite Four. Maybe it's because I was rocking 4 new Pokemon that I don't think stand a chance against Dragon types. Or maybe it's because I know Drayton is going to be the hardest Elite Four member yet. I barely scraped by in the battles against Amarys and Lacey, and knowing that a tougher opponent was standing right in front of me made things feel pretty bleak. Here's the deal though. I'm about 40 hours into this run, and just like with Crispin, Amarys, and Lacey, I have to take a leap of faith and trust that I've done everything I can to win this fight. I cannot put this challenge off anymore because I need to conquer the BB League, so let's get to it. Drayton leads with Flygon and Dragonite, and I decided to lead with Grenin and Joy. Looking at this matchup, right off the bat, I have a huge disadvantage. Any physical move from Drayton will easily destroy Joy, and Grenin would have his Jordans creased by any flying type moves. All that said, I gambled on the chance that Joy would live a turn and had it use Ice Beam to hopefully deal a 4 times blow to Dragonite. I also decided to switch out Grenin into Arachlodon, hoping to tank any hits that would come my way. Flygon's opening move was a disaster though. It used Earthquake, which did not bode well. It did a huge amount of damage to Arachlodon, and even knocked out Joy in one shot. This was not the start I was looking for, and to be honest, I should have expected Flygon to use the Earthquake. I honestly think I forgot Flygon was a ground type. The turn wasn't over though, and to make things even worse, Dragonite used Tailwind. This is a disastrous move, which allows all of Drayton's Pokemon to move first before me. It is going to be incredibly difficult to deal with that, because a lot of my Pokemon are designed to hit fast and hard and not really take any hits themselves. It also doesn't help that the ground type is a horrible move against a majority of my team, so I'm in a pretty tough spot here. After some thought, I switched into Magnet. Magnet isn't the best, but pretty much all my remaining Pokemon fold to flying moves or Earthquake. Magnet does have the sturdy ability, and I'm hoping that he can get some damage in before dying himself. For Arachlodon, again, because I don't have any really good swaps, I decided to try Draco Meteor on the small chance that he lives through the onslaught of attacks from Dragonite and Flygon. Flygon showed no remorse though, and went for an Earthquake again. This was enough to knock out Arachlodon, and it brought Magnet down to sturdy territory. Dragonite still got to go first though, and after using Ice Spinner, it finished off Golem. This is not good. Arachlodon was one of my aces, and I was hoping to rely on his Dragon typing to carry me through this fight. Right now I'm down to 3 Pokemon, and I don't think any of them can survive an onslaught from Dragonite and Flygon to retaliate. I had to make a tough decision here, so I switched into Danger Noodle and Kenny for the sole purpose of stalling. Both of them know Protect, so I used that move to stall for a turn and hopefully wait for that Tailwind to wear off. It really just delayed the inevitable though. Both Kenny and Danger Noodle tried to attack, but the Tailwind was still in effect, so Earthquake made quick work of Danger Noodle. Kenny managed to survive an Earthquake like the champion he is, but the writing is kind of on the wall here. I sent in Grenin, my last Pokemon, but it was pretty obvious I was gonna lose here. With Tailwind still in effect and Drayton still having 6 Pokemon, I'm pretty screwed. There's not much I can do. The only positive here is that I got to watch Kenny terrestrialize before I lost everything. Just like that, all 6 of my shiny Pokemon fainted, and I lost to Drayton. It was a massacre. This was a heartbreaking development, to say the least. Losing like that was so unimaginably devastating. I spent all this time and effort just to fail here. I managed to lose Kenny here as well, who was my first shiny that gave me the win in so many battles. I really thought I could use it for the whole challenge, but I failed him and all the other shinies on my team. I remember being so upset here that I had to go to a Discord call with my friends just to talk it out. The desire to quit was real, but I wouldn't have made this video if I quit. At some point, especially after sinking so much time into something, you just gotta commit to finishing it. So that's what I did. I got back on the horse and got back into the game. By the way, Drayton, you look way too smug for someone that just eliminated my entire team of shiny Pokemon I spent hours collecting. You know what? I'm gonna say it. I've been holding this back since I first met you out of respect, but I can't keep quiet anymore. Your hair looks like toothpaste. So with that out of the way, let's be real because I want to talk. Even though I said this is a hardcore Nuzlocke, I didn't want to reset the run here, and I did that for 2 reasons. Number 1, this is the final DLC of Scarlet and Violet, and I'm playing this on my normal Switch save file. I don't want to start from scratch, grind through the entire main story, then the Teal Mask DLC just to restart the Indigo disc. I didn't do a shiny Nuzlocke of the main story or the Teal Mask, so it wouldn't make sense for me to restart. My main goal with this challenge was to tackle the DLC in a unique way, use some new Pokemon, and honestly get my feet wet with shiny hardcore Nuzlocke. I still believe that I can meet these goals, so I won't be restarting my game. Not restarting here though does not change the fact that I just lost my entire team and I'm gonna have to start from scratch just to rebuild everything. That means I'll have to consult the wheel and shiny hunt 6 brand new Pokemon and re-challenge Drayton as many times as it takes to beat him. Also, remember that I created a rule for the wheel. I'm removing the entire family line of Pokemon as I spin, which means that I'm not gonna have an infinite number of tries here, and I'm gonna be forced to use new Pokemon each and every time a team member falls. I'm going full Ender's Game here. I don't care how many Pokemon it takes as long as I wipe that smug look off Drayton's face. First up is Doyson. This guy took forever, and this time around it wasn't because of bad luck. This guy's shiny is really tough to spot, especially with the lighting in this game. After about 2 hours, this happened. shiny. This looks like a different color. I think this is it, Chris. Oh, not that one. No, no, no. Ah! Come back! He's running away. Ah!
No. It's still there. Oh!
This is so tense. Steady.
Hey! Oh my! I just gotta catch it.
Oh. 1 down, 5 to go. Meet Flub. This is one addition to the team I was pretty excited about. He's basically a tank, so I taught him some moves that would hit a wide range of types and moved on to the next hunt. Love Disc was next, and after spending an eternity on the last hunt, I was pretty optimistic that this would be much easier. Even though I had to hunt in the laggy water, a shiny Love Disc would be much easier to spot than a Doyson, so I was thankful this happened in about 30 minutes. Oh, yes. There he is. There he is. Oh. Yes. Oh. This one's important. Before I do the rundown on this guy, I wanted to talk about something pretty amazing that happened with him. He has the rare mark, which is absurd. With the sandwich I was using that had title power 3, the odds of finding this guy were 1 in 250, which if you add that on top of the odds of being shiny, this guy is 1 in 128,000. That's a crazy number, which makes this Pokemon very special to me. Meet Fish. Not only is this guy extraordinarily rare, he's also a key Pokemon strategy to take on Drayton. I know he may look unassuming and silly, but this little guy will be key, and I'll go over that as we hunt more Pokemon. The next target was Venomoth, so let's get to it. I talked about the RNG in this game giving and taking sometimes, and after the absurdly long hunt for Flub, the game was pretty generous to me. This was an absurdly quick hunt, and within 20 minutes, this happened.
You didn't pick up the phone.
I never dialed him.
Really went wrong.
Assuming it outspeeds and everything. But Love Disc also learns. Ah, there he is! Look at it. Catching everything in a quick ball. The most disgusting ball.
How long was that hunt?
That was pretty quick. Meet Dusty. This Pokemon isn't exactly a very competitive looking girl, but she does learn some pretty nice moves that could come in handy during a battle. I taught her Sleep Powder, Protect, and Toxic, hoping to make this a pretty nice support Pokemon. That's 3 hunts down now, so I got 3 to go. And the next one is going to be the most important piece I'll need to take out Drayton. The wheel decided on Ninetales, which, if you didn't know, in this DLC is the Alolan form. This guy is a natural enemy to Dragon types, so I was pretty excited to hunt it for that reason, but scared for another. The shiny for this guy is subtle. I had a hard time telling the difference between Vulpix while running around since the colors in this game are a bit tricky to tell apart sometimes. After about an hour, this happened. Some shiny? Yes! Meet Catherine. I'm curious if you understand this reference. Like I said, this Pokemon will be the key to my strategy to beat Drayton. With the ability Snow Warning, I'll be able to rattle off 100% accuracy blizzards to my heart's content, which should do wonders against Dragon types. This one Pokemon gave me so much confidence going into my rematch, but there's 2 more members I need to get. The wheel decided that Torterra would be my next Pokemon. This is another starter Pokemon hunt, but at this point, I've unlocked all the starters from my previous time that I spent gathering barbecue points. I basically went to the mountains where Turtig spawned, ran around for 30 minutes, and this happened. There he is. There he is. Try this fireball, it ain't gonna work. Oh, it did work. Meet Overgrow. Creative name, I know. I promise I didn't just copy his abilities name. This Pokemon is pretty good now with some of the moves you can learn and the newer Loaded Dice item. The Loaded Dice make it so that moves like Bullet Seed and Rock Blast hit the maximum number of times, which makes Torterra's moves very high base power. Pair that with something like Shell Smash, and you got a real threat here. We've got 1 more shiny Pokemon to go though, and the wheel decided that Rillaboom would be my last target. For this hunt, I traveled to the coastal biome and isolated its encounter with the grass sandwich on the beach. It didn't take me too much time to find it, though I don't think I was on my game. I could not for the life of me get this guy to stay in the Pokeball, and Flub was getting pretty low on health, so I decided to switch into Fish, thinking that it was a smart way to protect Flub from any crazy critical hits. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, because Grookey unleashed this move. That was pretty lucky. So after that mistake, I switched into Venonat, which also got thrown into the danger zone. I don't know how I managed to do it, but 3 of my Pokemon are in the danger zone here, so I gave up on trying to catch them using fancy Pokeballs, and to avoid disaster, I threw another Master Ball. I'm pretty glad that I spent a lot of time with the item printer and the Pokeball Lotto. It really paid off here. Meet Lars. This is another reference I'm curious if you can pick up on, though this one's a little more subtle. She's not just another grass type starter. This one's pretty cool and strong to boot. She's got some good stats, the ability Grassy Surge, which pairs well with some of my team, and the ability to learn strong moves to make her a welcome addition to the team. Though I don't expect the second grass type to be useful in the Drayton fight. Speaking of Drayton though, I now have a full team, and it's time to head back for a rematch. For round 2, I decided that all bets were off. I already faced this guy blind once, and I am not doing that again. So I did what any good Nuzlocke would do. I studied his team in painful detail and consulted experts on Reddit to craft my perfect army with the sole purpose of crushing Drayton. After hours of shiny hunting and even longer prepping my team, it was time to put old toothpaste hair here out of his misery. There's just one more thing I need to take care of first though. Throughout the DLC, there have been countless remakes and nods to the music that was in the Gen 5 games. I've said it before, but I'm a huge fan, and there's one song that I'm disappointed I have not heard yet. I honestly think this is the perfect opportunity to play it. In a way, Drayton, I have to thank you for putting me in my place. Without that happening, I wouldn't have gotten to hear this banger. Just like before, Drayton led with Flygon and Dragonite, but it was time to enact my plan by leading with Catherine and Fish. On entry, Catherine's Snow Warning sets up a Hail, which is super important. Both of my teammates know Blizzard, and with the Hail, I'll be able to hit Drayton's Pokemon with 100% accuracy, dealing absurd damage and devastating his entire Dragon-type team. There is one wrinkle though. Dragonite has both the multi-scale ability and a Yak Berry, which will dramatically reduce the damage he takes. The strategy here was to invest in Fish's speed and ensure that he hits Blizzard first to soften up Dragonite, and have Catherine finish him off once his guard's down. The turn shook out exactly as planned. Catherine terrestrialized right away to do maximum damage, and Fish softened up both Flygon and Dragonite with his first Blizzard. Catherine finished the job by taking out both of Drayton's Pokemon in one turn. This was immensely satisfying, especially after being thrashed by him the first time we battled. I hit him so hard at the beginning of this battle that he yapped off 2 cutscenes in a row. Man, I wish I did this the first time. For turn 2, Drayton sent out Haxorus and Sceptile, which are both weak to Blizzard. You know what they say, if it worked once, why change anything? So I had both Catherine and Fish use Blizzard again. Unfortunately, Sceptile is one fast Pokemon, and I severely underestimated just how fast he was. He managed to outspeed Fish and used Leaf Blade to one-shot him. It was a critical hit, but I don't think that mattered. Even though his life was short-lived, he was incredibly useful, and I don't think I would have had a chance to beat Drayton without him. I'll always have a spot in my heart for the rare-marked Fish. Catherine wasn't in the mood to mourn though, and she took out both Haxorus and Sceptile with a Blizzard in revenge. Even though I've suffered one loss this battle, things are going much better than the last time we fought. It's crazy how much a difference prep makes. For turn 3, Drayton sent out Arachlodon and Kingdra, and I decided to send out Rillaboom. I planned to keep using the move that worked, so Catherine was going to use Blizzard again. Rillaboom's plan was to use Fake Out to make Kingdra flinch for a turn. I was basically banking on Arachlodon being knocked out this turn, and I thought that Fake Out would guarantee protect my Pokemon in case Kingdra survived. To my surprise though, Arachlodon hung on by a thread, which was a bit scary. This guy does know some Steel-type moves, which would be disastrous if he pointed them towards Catherine. He did just that and hit Catherine with a Flash Cannon, which in my mind would be the end. Thankfully, Catherine, like the MVP she is, survived in just the same way Arachlodon did, making the rest of the battle basically a dub. Catherine outspeeds everyone on the field, so I went for one final Blizzard to finish the job. Arachlodon got taken out, and in a small twist, Kingdra survived, but it didn't really matter. Lars finished the job off with Woodhammer to close the battle out and give us our 4th and final Elite Four victory. It is insane how much of a difference prep makes in battles. Looking back, it's hard to understand why I thought doing things blind would be a good idea. It also feels like an absolute miracle that I managed to beat the other Elite Four members with no real prep. I'm kind of questioning how I did it. The next thing that I need to set my eyes on is the champion. Speaking of him, Kieran stopped by, and after seeing our victory over Elite Four Drayton, he invited me to battle and settle things once and for all with the championship match. You can tell that this is a big moment for him. He definitely wants to prove himself, and it's clear that he's put in a lot of time and effort to achieve his current level. Because of my actions in this story and the previous Teal Mask story, I've sent him on a long journey to beat me, but he's gonna have to wait just a bit longer because I have to replace the shiny Pokemon I just lost. This time, the wheel decided on Chestnut, so I went to Chargestone Cave for the first time to hunt this Pokemon. The hunt was pretty standard, but as a word of warning, do not make a sandwich in the cave unless you want to be flashbanged. I've never seen a sandwich shine so brightly. I remember doing this hunt late at night, and I think I have permanent eye damage. My eyesight must not have been too bad though, because I managed to spot this guy after about an hour.
Oh, bless. Oh. Yes.
Meet Chestnut. This is another Pokemon I didn't nickname because I wasn't exactly thrilled to have it on my team. It's not my favorite Pokemon design, and to top it off, this is my third grass starter. That said though, I basically built him the same way as Rillaboom. I gave him some strong moves, and that's about it. Having 3 grass types is kind of a bummer going into the champion battle, but it is what it is. I'll make do, and I'm sure I'll come up with something for Kieran's fight. Remember what I said about preparation making all the difference? I took that advice to heart for this battle here. Being hosed by Drayton was still fresh in my mind, even after I just beat him convincingly. I did not want to repeat that situation because losing here means hours of work and team rebuilding. Besides, I've got something to prove here and a part to play in this story. It's taken some time, but I've finally learned my place in this Pokemon world, and I understand my purpose here in this story. I'm here to destroy Kieran. This guy thinks he's the main character, and it's my job to bring him down to earth by crushing him. Whether I like it or not, I have to play the bad guy here. I've invaded Kieran's life by befriending his mean sister, who constantly knocked him down and belittled him. I took away his childhood dream of discovering and capturing Ogerpon, and I consistently thrashed him in Pokemon battles. I've taken everything he wants away from him, and it's my job as the antagonist here to continue to do so. You had better believe that I came with a strategy before facing him. It's what I have to do to play the part. Don't worry, Kieran. I'm doing this because I care about you. There will be pain and suffering, I'm sure, but I'm doing this because I know you will come out on the other side stronger. I also refuse to hunt another 6 shiny Pokemon, so I gotta take you out here and now, Kieran. I hope you're ready. Kieran led with Dragonite and Politoed, and after some careful planning by myself, I led with Catherine and Lars. Unfortunately, the Snow Warning ability won't work for this battle. Politoed's ability is Drizzle, and since he is slower, the rain will overwrite my Hail. This wasn't really a problem though, since I already planned on that happening. Another idea with this lead was to set up grassy terrain. After looking at Kieran's team, I figured me and my 3 grass-type starters would benefit more from it than he could. On the attacks front, it's pretty simple. Catherine went for an Ice Beam to take out Dragonite, and Lars went for a Fake Out. The beauty of the move Fake Out is that it negates Dragonite's multi-scale ability, meaning he will take a full brunt of Catherine's attacks. That's just what happened, and the Dragonite fell with 1 Ice Beam. Politoed still had a chance to move though, and it went for a Weather Ball on Catherine, doing about half health. It was a pretty big amount of damage, but so far everything's going according to plan here. For turn 2, Kieran sent out the scariest Pokemon on his team by far, Incineroar. This fire-type monster has super effective moves on 5 of the 6 Pokemon on my team. If I can't take it out here, I'll have no chance of beating him. Here's the plan to take out Incineroar. Catherine will use Dazzling Gleam, and Rillaboom is going to go for a Brick Break. My thought here is that even with the lowered attack from Intimidate, I should still be able to take out Incineroar. Politoed started off the turn though, and it used Helping Hand, which is a pretty terrifying move that could buff one of Incineroar's attacks. All that doesn't matter if it's dead though, so I'm hoping that my Pokemon can take out Incineroar. Dazzling Gleam did about a quarter of its health, and Brick Break brought it down to about half health, which is not good. In retaliation, Incineroar used Flare Blitz on Catherine to take her out. This one stung a bit. I really like Catherine since she single-handedly took out Drayton and helped me get back on track in this DLC. It was a tough loss to swallow. I couldn't dwell on it too much because I still had a battle to fight. So for turn 3, I sent out Chestnut to avenge my fallen. The plan here is to continue focusing on Incineroar because I need that Pokemon gone. To do this, I had Chestnut go for a Hammer Arm and Lars go for a Wood Hammer to hopefully finish off Politoed if Chestnut takes out Incineroar. This plan worked beautifully. Hammer Arm crushed Incineroar and Wood Hammer bonked Politoed to death. Believe it or not, even with the loss of Catherine, I'm pretty much on track with my plan. Having taken out Kieran's 3 Pokemon while only suffering 1 loss puts myself in a great spot. It's not over yet though. Kieran sent out Grimmsnarl and Porygon Z to replace the ones he just lost. The plan this turn was to have Lars use Brick Break. I knew Grimmsnarl had Reflect, so I'd hoped I'd predict that and shatter the shield this turn. The plan for Chestnut was to use Hammer Arm again to hopefully take out Porygon. I was also banking on the fact that he could outspeed. Unfortunately, that's not true, and Porygon outspeeds, so it used Ice Beam to delete Chestnut. You know, just because I'm on track with my plan doesn't mean my plan was flawless, and looking back, I severely underestimated how strong Porygon could be. Having the ability Adaptability and a Life Orb to boot made this guy a real threat. Not to mention that he has a wide range of moves that he can use, so I am not in a good spot with him. That loss was a bit of a wake-up call. Even though Chestnut wasn't one of my favorite Pokemon, it's Always hard to lose a teammate like that, especially in a battle of this importance. The predicted reflect didn't come into fruition either, so Rillaboom's Brick Break was for naught, and Rillaboom was hit in return with the Spirit Break for a little damage. For turn 5, I decided to start with the cheesy strats, so I sent out Dusty. He's equipped with all sorts of status and stall moves for the sole purpose of shutting down scary Pokemon like Porygon, so I had him go for a Sleep Powder to start off. Rillaboom went back to Brick Break, still waiting for that reflect. As planned, Grimmsnarl went for the move in question, but the sad part is that Porygon is fast, and he managed to get a Hyper Beam off on Lars before he could do anything. That was another tough loss to see. He was a Pokemon I was really excited to have on the team, and I thought he'd be crucial in helping me finish this battle. The plan is definitely out the window here, and I'm starting to feel a lot more pressured than I wanted to. On a good note though, Dusty's Sleep Powder hit to end the turn, which temporarily shut down the Porygon threat. For turn 6, I sent out Overgrow and decided it was time to go big or go home. I took a bit of a gamble and had Overgrow use Shell Smash. I knew Grimmsnarl knew Sucker Punch, so by choosing a non-attacking move, I'd hope to avoid any damage. And second, I banked on Porygon staying asleep. Plus, he just used Hyper Beam, which meant that he would have to recover this turn anyways. Dusty's job was just to stall, so he used Protect. The plan worked perfectly. As predicted, Grimmsnarl used Sucker Punch, and because Porygon was asleep, nothing really happened. Overgrow successfully set up, so it's time to go on to the next turn. And I plan to capitalize, as well as throw some more cheese into the mix. Dusty used Sleep Powder again on Grimmsnarl to put him out of commission, while Overgrow Terastallized and went for a Bullet Seed, which should do massive damage to Porygon and take care of it. I was still pretty worried about Sucker Punch, but at the end of the day, Grimmsnarl decided to use Light Screen instead, which was a great turn of events. Torterra hurled its Seed to take out Porygon, and Sleep Powder managed to hit again. For those of you keeping track at home, Sleep Powder's accuracy is only 80%, and I've managed to land it every single time in this run between Aloha and now Dusty. I just wanted to call attention to how lucky I've been hitting these Sleep Powders. Let's call it skill though, as Kieran sent out his last and most iconic Pokemon, Hydrapple. The plan here is pretty simple. I want to continue stalling with Dusty, so the plan here is to use Protect again. Here's the big brain part though, and why preparation can be so powerful. In all the previous Elite Four battles, the last Pokemon is Terastallized into their trainer's signature type, which made things easier to predict in my blind battles. Kieran doesn't really have a signature type, but I do know he's going to Terastallize Hydrapple into a fighting type. With that knowledge, I had Overgrow use Bullet Seed on Hydrapple, since I knew it would do a large amount of neutral damage, and I hoped it would take it out. If you're unfamiliar, Bullet Seed is a particularly dramatic move. I knew for a fact it was going to hit 5 times, but you figure out pretty quickly on the first hit if it's actually going to kill or not. The first hit did not do at least 1/5 of its health, so now I have to watch and wait as Hydrapple will survive this attack and potentially take out Overgrow. I was feeling pretty down because I thought I was at risk of losing a Pokemon, but to my surprise, a miracle happened. On the last hit, Torterra got a crit, which did enough damage to KO Hydrapple. Nothing like a little favorable RNG to take out Kieran. It's almost like the story wanted me to win. The battle's basically over now. Kieran's cooked. Grimmsnarl's his last Pokemon, and he's asleep, so it's just a matter of throwing some seeds around until Grimmsnarl's gone. It took an extra turn, but I managed to claim victory over Kieran, as was my duty as the antagonist of this story. Whether I like it or not, I have officially bullied this poor kid into the ground. You know, I've seen a lot of comments where people throw shade at Kieran for being whiny and insufferable at times, but put yourself in his shoes for a second. Like I said, this guy thinks he's the hero of the story. I've befriended his sister who constantly knocked him down, took away his childhood dreams, and managed to thrash him in yet another Pokemon battle, but this time in front of the entire school after he spent an absurd amount of time and effort just training for this one battle. I can sympathize with him. I kind of know what it's like to try hard at something and fail, and I think you should cut him some slack here. I mean, look at this guy. He's in complete denial at what just happened. Drayton isn't cutting him any slack though, and he hits Kieran with this absolute banger of a line. You know what, Drayton? I kind of like your style. Let's lean into the villain arc, and you know what this moment needs? A commemorative photo. With that victory, I managed to become champion of the Blueberry League, and it took an insane amount of time to do. On the story front, Drayton congratulated me while the other members of the Elite Four dealt with Kieran's fallout. While they were discussing the logistics of how an exchange student could even act as champion at this school, I got called to the office to start the final chapter of this story. But before that, I have some shiny Pokemon I need to hunt because I gotta replace the ones I just lost. So it's time to spin the wheel one last time before taking on the finale. First on the list is Flygon. Nothing really special stood out to me during the time I spent on this hunt. I first started off by hunting Vibrava, had no luck, so I transitioned into hunting Flygon itself once I found an outbreak for it. After about an hour of hunting, this happened. That was quick. Ooh, I don't want to fight you, I want to fight that guy. I don't know, I don't like any of the balls, to be honest. I really like a quick ball. That's just my jam. Stress-free. Meet Sandy. The nicknames were on point for this one, I know. At this stage of the game for the builds, I was just giving Pokemon the strongest moves I could think of. I had no idea what I was going to face at the end of this game, so I just taught him whatever move I thought would fit and moved on to the next hunt. The second Pokemon on my list was Camerupt. This guy was tricky. I spent forever trying to get an outbreak for him, and that just didn't happen. I eventually settled on the inside of a small cave where a large number of these guys spawn, and you could auto battle away until the shiny would eventually show up. Also, please forgive me, I lost the clip of me getting him. With 27 shiny hunts by this point, I was bound to miss recording one of them. For the sake of keeping track of my shiny hunting time too, I'm just gonna round up to 42 hours since that's my best guess. My god, I've been shiny hunting for 42 hours. I might have a problem. Meet Camerupt. This is yet another Pokemon that I forgot to nickname. I have no idea how this keeps happening. I think I just keep saying I'm going to nickname him later and then never do it. That's one habit I gotta fix. For the sake of this challenge, I really didn't know what to do with him. So just like with Flygon, I taught him some moves I thought would be useful to cover a wide range of types and moved into my last hunt. The final Pokemon I needed was Plusle, which was an absolute nightmare to say the least. If you aren't familiar with the shiny of this guy, it looks insanely similar to the normal form. I spent hours clearing outbreaks and checking Pokemon one by one using the Let's Go feature just looking for this guy because I literally could not tell with my eyes. After almost 2 hours of auto battling, this happened.
Holy crap, finally. Ugh. Had enough.
Meet Plusle. Man, I must not have been in the nicknaming mood. This is kinda rough, especially for a Nuzlocke. I'll throw myself a bone here though. This guy was an absolute pain to get, and I didn't really have anything nice to say about him, so he didn't get a nickname. As for a build, I taught him his signature move, Helping Hand, and some other moves like Nuzzle and Protect, which I thought would be useful for a final fight. Usually for challenges like this, it's great to have a plan, but because this was a blind run for me, I didn't know exactly how to prepare my team. I basically kept all my builds as they were for the Kieran fight, and tried to make my new team members as flexible as possible. It's definitely a gamble as to whether or not my team will be good enough. But on the bright side, I'll find out soon if I'm prepared, since it's time to head to the classroom and finish this story once and for all. To be honest, I didn't know the exact endpoint of the story, but I had a feeling it was rapidly approaching after our recent triumph over the BB League. At this point, I was feeling very anxious and relieved. I'm well over 40 hours into this DLC, and to say I want this challenge to be over with is an understatement. There have been a lot of stressful moments and several heartbreaks, but it's comforting to finally see a finish line on the horizon. As for the story, we finally get a chance to meet with Briar in the classroom. Briar is not only a teacher of Blueberry Academy, but she's also a researcher who studies the great creator of Paldea. She hopes to uncover whatever mysteries lie there, and her dedication to that research is obsessive. I get deranged, mad scientist vibes from her, so I'm a bit worried I'll get dragged into some experiment that will go horribly wrong. I seem to be onto something with that theory too, because she asks the entire group to travel on an expedition to Area Zero. The goal of this mission on the surface is to gather samples of the crystals present in the crater, but Briar's true goal and her passion lie in finding Terapagos, a legendary Pokemon that's in that area. Gita and Rika, characters from the main story's Pokemon League, make an appearance as well. They explain that the area is under their protection, and typically it's off limits, even for research trips like this. That said, there is a growing risk that strong Pokemon may escape Area Zero, and they can't keep researchers out much longer. They need more info and work done to contain the threat, which is where the group at Blueberry Academy comes in. Apparently the best equipped individuals for the job are the 13-year-old Pokemon trainers. Kieran is part of our group too, and he is all over this opportunity. He wants to prove himself by finding whatever legendary Pokemon there is and catch it. He's also not looking much better than where we left him last time. I don't think his recent public humiliation has taught him anything, and I'm a little worried that something inside him is going to snap on this trip. The only way we'll find out is to continue forward with the story, so we all traveled into Area Zero. At this point, I'm the only character that's been to this area before, on account of the main game story, so I'm kinda acting like a tour guide here, but that'll end soon enough since we are going even deeper than we did last time. In the spot that served as a stage for the end of the main story, we open the final gate yet again, but this time with the Indigo disc. Roll credits. This will grant us access to the deepest parts of Area Zero, where we will hopefully find what we're looking for. By the way, I'd like to take a quick aside to acknowledge the greatest pun I've ever seen in a Pokemon game. Nothing like a little humor to take the edge off of a stressful finale. Once we were in the depths, we began our search, and to my surprise, we found something that was much worse than crystals and even worse than Terapagos. We found a brand new Pokemon type. What did I say earlier? I am not mentally prepared for a new Pokemon type. I know for a fact that I'm going to struggle to understand this, especially since I'm still learning how the fairy type works. I think the worst part about all this is that there wasn't even a tutorial. I was just forced into a few battles to learn in the heat of the moment how this new type works. Despite my fears, it actually wasn't that bad. I ended up making short work of the Glamora, Noivern, Sandy Shocks, and Gargantual to make my way to the final area. This final zone looked remarkably similar to a Terrarium dungeon, which I thought was interesting, but I soon pushed that thought out of my mind when I saw a suspicious looking stone. This looked a lot like the hidden treasure that both Briar and Kieran were searching for, and because of that, Kieran wasted no time trying to get his hands on it. As Kieran struggled to rip the stone out, it happened. Kieran snapped. The poor kid is going through a lot, but at least he's telling us why this time. He's mad that I've got strong Pokemon, he's mad that I can make friends wherever I go, and worst of all, he's mad that I took away his dream Pokemon, Ogerpon. Kieran feels like he has nothing left. He's worked so hard to try and beat me in a battle just to fall short another time. To him, this legendary treasure is the one thing that can save him and make things right. As he finished sharing his thoughts, Kieran finally managed to pull out the treasure, and this is what happened. We are finally introduced to the legendary Pokemon Terapagos, but the worst thing possible for Kieran happened. In a sick twist, the first person Terapagos sees is me, and it even started to walk towards me. It was looking like Kieran was going to lose yet another legendary Pokemon to his rival. He decided that he was not going to let that stand though, so in an unprecedented move, he tossed a Master Ball to guarantee the capture and claim this legendary Pokemon for himself. I gotta hand it to him, that's pretty sick. I honestly didn't expect him to go to this lengths to outdo me, and I definitely got a main character here. This turn of events seemed to make him cocky though, and without wasting any time, he challenged me to a battle with his fresh new legendary Pokemon. I honestly had no idea what to expect in this situation, but all the signs pointed to this being the final battle of the story. I tried to write a heroic and memorable speech about overcoming adversity, but simply put, this battle is the culmination of everything I've been through. All the losses, the nearly 50 hours of shiny hunting and gameplay in this DLC brought me to this battle. I've already spent long enough on this challenge, so let's get to it, Kieran, and end this. To my surprise, Kieran led with only Terapagos, making this the first single battle in the DLC so far, which definitely threw a wrench into my plans. I've built a lot of my team with double battles in mind, and I expected this to be a rematch of the previous champion battle with just one Pokemon swap for Terapagos, so this definitely wasn't what I was expecting. Regardless, I'm committed and I'm in the battle now, so I decided to lead with Overgrow. The main issue here is that I had no idea what type Terapagos is, or what its abilities were. The plan was to just throw something at it and see what worked. If I can figure out its typing, I should be able to put myself in a great spot to finish this challenge. The first move I tried was a Terra Grass Bullet Seed, but unfortunately for me, Terapagos' ability turned out to be Terra Shell, which, according to the game, distorted type matchups. Whatever that means. I assumed at the time that its type would change to whatever move I used, similar to how Kecleon's color change ability works. Having the Bullet Seed hit for not very effective damage seemed to support that theory too. It was Terapagos' turn though, and it hit me with a Water Pulse, which had the unfortunate side effect of confusing Overgrow. This wasn't exactly the start I was looking for, but honestly things from here on out were pretty straightforward. For the next turn and for the rest of the battle, I had Overgrow use Earthquake while Terapagos inflicted some damage back to Overgrow. Despite me not knowing what type this guy was and hitting myself with confusion a couple times, the battle turned out to be pretty simple, and Overgrow prevailed. Kieran was in as much shock as I was after that battle. This was supposed to be the climax, the epic final battle. There's no possible way the end of the DLC would be this easy. I should probably keep my mouth shut though, because if what I know about final boss fights in games is true, I'm probably gonna trigger a flag to start a second phase for this fight. When the mad scientist Briar suggested that Kieran uses Terror Orb to terastallize Terapagos and bring out its full potential, I started getting a bit sweaty because I knew nothing good was about to happen. If I had any control over the situation, I would have told Briar to stop, as she's a lunatic for even suggesting that. But the reality is that there is no stopping Kieran now. After everything he has faced, if you put a way for him to get stronger in his reach, he's going to seize it without hesitation. And that's exactly what he did. Kieran used his Terror Orb to unleash Terapagos, but things got out of hand very quickly. You know it's bad when the Master Ball doesn't even work. At this point, Kieran is beside himself, and the events unfolding in front of him simply paralyze him. The poor guy can't catch a break. His obsession has created a monster that's putting the entire region at risk, and you can tell it's broken him. He's given up, but Carmine has the sense to step in and help. For now, it's me and Carmine versus this beast. Things are finally shaping up to be the finale I expected. With my full team of 6 and Carmine's help, we should be able to take care of this turtle god no problem. It's worth noting that I had no opportunity to heal or swap Pokemon here, so I'm leading off with Overgrow again, and Carmine is leading off with Sinistcha. Even with Sinistra's hospitality ability gaining me some health, Overgrow is starting off this battle at half health, which isn't exactly ideal when you're staring down a turtle god. That's not the only problem though, since I still have no idea what type this guy is. After some thought, I decided that Bullet Seed was my best option still, so that's what I went for. Unfortunately, this move did absolutely nothing to Terapagos. After my move, Briar stepped in to let me know that I'll probably have to terastallize my Pokemon to do any real damage, which is good to know for the future. It was Terapagos' turn now though, and it used the new move Terra Starstorm to do a solid amount of damage to both me and Sinistcha. Luckily for me, some of that damage was offset by Carmine's healing move Life Dew, so we ended up in an okay position after the first turn. At this point, it became pretty clear that I needed to keep using damaging moves to build up a Terra Charge so I could terastallize and deal massive damage, similar to a Terrarium. So for the next few turns, I continued to use Bullet Seed, and everything played out in much the same way as the first turn. I did have a lucky break too on one of the turns, since Sinistcha managed to burn Terapagos. This put me in a very comfortable spot, since this god's physical attack would now be lowered. With my newfound confidence, the time to terastallize finally came, so I had Overgrow go for a Terra Grass Bullet Seed to finish this. This ended up working fantastically, and while it looks like the damage is capped to keep this fight stuck in phases, I did more than enough damage to finish the first one. Unfortunately, Terapagos was able to get one last hit in on Sinistcha, which knocked it out. This was also Carmine's last Pokemon, so I ended up finding myself in a 1v1 against a god. To be honest, I was not 100% sure that I'd be able to handle this myself. Terapagos still has a lot of health left. It would have been nice to have Kieran's help, but he is still traumatized in the corner, so I'll have to do this on my own. I still have 6 Pokemon too, so I should still have the firepower to finish this thing off. All that said, I still have no idea what type this guy is. At the time, I assumed Terapagos was now a grass type because he absorbed Overgrow's Terra Grass energy. That made me decide to swap into a fresh Pokemon, Flub, who I figured could take care of business for me. He's a very tanky Pokemon, and managing to take the Terra Starstorm on the swap made me feel confident. Still probing for a weakness, I had Flub use Psychic. Unexpectedly though, the move hit for not very effective damage, which made me reconsider everything. If this god was actually grass type, my move should have done neutral damage, but because it wasn't very effective, I'll have to go back to the drawing board. For the next turn, I tried Focus Blast, and to my disappointment, it wasn't very effective either. At this point, I was simply confused, nervous, and I didn't really know how to move forward. In hindsight, I could have paused, looked at a Pokemon type chart, and realized that the only type that resists both Psychic and Fighting attacks is the Psychic type itself, meaning that at this point, I know Terapagos is the Psychic type. Instead, I panicked and decided to terastallize Flub and use Psychic, thinking that even with the not very effective damage, I would do enough Terra damage to offset that. I'll be blunt here, this is the worst decision I could have made, and the repercussions of this will become apparent soon. In my defense, I was learning everything about this Pokemon on the fly. I'll cut myself a little slack, but I really should have taken a little time to think, because things are about to get a lot worse from here. At this point, it is worth noting that Terapagos is faster than Flub, so while Flub does go through the process of terastallizing, Terapagos will have a chance to hit me first. This is as good a time as any to explain the move Terra Starstorm. This is the first move to have the new Stellar type, and surprisingly enough, the Stellar type is normally neutral to all other types in the game. The unfortunate part, and the reason I made a huge mistake here, is that if the Stellar type is used on a terastallized Pokemon, the move will become super effective, which does not bode well for Flub. Without even realizing it, I put Flub in immense amounts of danger, but I managed to survive, which is just a miracle. I had a chance to land an attack, but just as I explained earlier, the Psychic type didn't do that much damage, even Terra boosted. I have some serious problems now. Terapagos will 100% outspeeds Flub, so it won't be able to get a hit in without fainting first. I gave it some thought, and I decided to send out Camerupt, who ended up taking a huge hit from Terra Starstorm for me. Another side effect of my terrible decision to terastallize became apparent here as I swapped Pokemon. Only one Pokemon on my team can terastallize in this battle, which means that the one Pokemon that can do any real damage to this turtle god is guaranteed to faint, and I've used up my only advantage. It is going to be incredibly difficult to finish this guy off, and I am not in a good spot. With all that said, I decided to have Camerupt try a Lava Plume, but unfortunately Unfortunately, Terapagos knows Water Pulse, and he outspeeds Camerupt, so he drowned before he could do anything. Oh, this is rough. Not only did I put myself into a terrible situation, I just lost a Pokemon. Things are starting to get pretty scary. Next up, I decided to try Plusle. The theory here was that if I could use Nuzzle to paralyze Terapagos, then I could finally start to outspeed this guy. I had a lot riding on this strategy, so I was excited to see it end in a success. The issue remains though that Plusle probably won't be able to take a hit very well. Luck was on my side here, and Plusle barely hung on. Unfortunately though, I don't have any good swaps. Here, I made the tough call to sacrifice Plusle, so I had him use Discharge one last time before he was headbutted to death by Terapagos. Even though Plusle did its job and paralyzed Terapagos, I was starting to feel the pressure here. That's another shiny Pokemon down the drain, and I still have a lot way to go. Next, I sent out Overgrow in the hopes that Bullet Seed would do some solid damage here. There's definitely an argument that I should have sent out the Terastallized Flub, but she's extremely low on health, and I didn't think that she could finish off this phase. Unfortunately, I didn't get the damage I needed, and this plan didn't work out. Overgrow was quickly taken out by Terra Starstorm, leaving me with just 3 Pokemon. At this point, things were looking pretty bleak. I was fresh out of ideas, and honestly starting to lose hope. My next attempt was to send out Sandy, hoping that some of her powerful moves would be enough to finish this phase. I tried the move Superpower, which was silly in hindsight, because I should have remembered that Focus Blast was not very effective earlier. I wasn't punished too badly for this mistake, since Sandy survived the retaliation attacks from Terapagos. Unfortunately though, because I had Sandy hold the Life Orb, this second chance wasn't very long-lived. As he used Dragon Claw, he went out on his own terms, leaving with just 2 Pokemon left. With Flub being heavily damaged, I decided that it was time for Dusty to get a chance in the spotlight. Unfortunately, this next play was the final nail in the coffin. I chose the move Toxic, which was just a silly mistake. Terapagos is already paralyzed, which meant that the move was doomed to fail from the start. You can't have a Pokemon with multiple status effects at the same time. Honestly, at this point, I could go turn by turn and explain how it happened, but the reality is I lost, plain and simple. I certainly fought to the end with both Dusty and Flub, but the reality is they just didn't have the longevity to survive Terapagos' assault. It's really hard to put into words how devastating a loss this is. It is so emotionally taxing to be this close to the finish line just to fall short and fail in the end. In my opinion, nothing is more frustrating than losing right after you've convinced yourself that you could have won. This battle felt unfair too. I was up against a monstrosity who boasted new Pokemon type, had new abilities, had new moves. I felt so unprepared and realized mid-battle that I just didn't stand a chance. Part of this is my fault for having this be a blind run and going through the challenge in this way, but a lot of it was because I made some silly mistakes in this fight. I did have a bit of an epiphany though at this point. This is probably how Kieran feels every time I beat him. Just how I'm an obstacle that stands in front of Kieran, Terapagos is an obstacle that stands in front of me. I could sit here and mope all day, but I'm not gonna let this defeat stand. I've got a lot of work to do before I can give this battle another shot. So it's time to consult the wheel and see who my new teammates are gonna be. First on the list is Oricorio, and I have a confession to make. I forgot to record this hunt. I'm gonna ask for a little bit of forgiveness here because this is almost the 30th shiny hunt in this video. I was bound to miss one of them. Well, this is actually the second one I've missed. So to make up for that, I'll give you a dramatic reenactment of how it went. There's bound to be one here somewhere. Oh! Look at that. Meet Pau. This guy isn't exactly the type of Pokemon that I would have picked to face the Terrestrial God, but here we are. It'll have to do. The coolest thing about him is his ability to learn setup moves and baton pass, so I taught him those and figured he'd be able to buff up another team member to take on Terapagos. My second hunt, according to the wheel, was Metagross, which is a Pokemon I was very excited to hunt. The Beldum family's silver shiny forms are some of my favorite of all time, so I was looking forward to having this Pokemon in such a dramatic final battle. As for the hunt itself, it was pretty straightforward. Nothing really noteworthy happened, besides the fact that I actually remembered to hit record on this one. I basically got myself an outbreak in the polar biome, and after about an hour, this happened.
Yes! Yes! This is the one. There we go.
Meet Meta, another creative nickname I know. At least I remembered to give him one this time. Even though I was excited to use him for this battle, I didn't know exactly how to build it. There were some moves that stood out though. I thought that Heavy Slam would be a good move because there's a huge difference in weight between Meta and Terapagos. I also figured Bullet Punch would help me outspeed Terapagos in critical situations, so I gave him those 2 moves and moved on to the third hunt. Up next was Electros, and this one was tricky. I had a bear of a time trying to find an outbreak or a place to isolate Tynamo encounters inside the terrarium. This Pokemon only spawns inside Chargestone Cave, so if I were to make an electric sandwich there, I would probably find a bunch of other shiny electric Pokemon before I found what I wanted. This Pokemon is incredibly tough to spot too. Tynamo is so small and the shiny is so subtle that I would have had to check nearly every single Pokemon one by one to make sure I didn't miss it. Despite all that, I tried for about an hour and quickly realized that I needed a change of plans. I ended up leaving Blueberry Academy to go for the mainland of Paldea, and I found myself an outbreak in the ocean. All my hard work must have paid off because as I was knocking out my 60 Pokemon to settle in for the shiny hunt, this happened.
Oh, that's, I didn't even see that. Just walked up to me. I was wondering why I wasn't fighting. That's awesome. There we go.
Meet Spicy Noodle. Let me explain the nickname. My thought process here, and stick with me, is that the nickname Danger Noodle was already taken, and electricity is spicy in my mind. So put the two together, and here you are, Spicy Noodle. This is one of my all-time favorite Pokemon designs, but it was tricky trying to get it ready for a Terapagos fight. I ended up settling on a bunch of different types of strong, special attacking Thunder moves and Giga Drain to potentially preserve some HP. I currently have 3 out of the 6 Pokemon I need, and the 4th Pokemon ended up being Magneton, another electric type. Sadly, RNG would not be on my side this time. Even though I quickly found an outbreak, it still took me 2 hours to find it. To make things even rougher, these guys can float away on you at certain times of the day, so I had to be super careful because they could potentially despawn if they got too far. That should explain why I was so dramatic when this happened.
Come back. Come back. Oh, I almost missed it.
Meet Tesla. Unfortunately, I don't have much to say here about this guy. This is my second electric type, so without much thought, I gave him some powerful electric moves and status moves like Thunder Wave and Confuse Ray. This was a stupid idea in hindsight, and I promise I'll explain it later. But at the moment, I've got 2 more shiny Pokemon I need to hunt, so let's get those done first. My second to last Pokemon ended up being Gothorita, which was another bear of a hunt. I could not for the life of me get an outbreak, so instead I settled on isolating these guys with a Psychic Sandwich and returned to running in circles around the Torchlit Labyrinth. This was yet another small Pokemon too, with an incredibly hard to spot shiny. The only way I could tell these guys apart was by looking deeply into their tiny eyes. Even while playing on my large monitor, I ended up hurting my neck on this hunt for sure. Despite all that, this happened in about an hour.
Is that a shiny? Yes. Ooh. Ooh. Yes, sir.
Meet Sassy. I'm not sure what the logic here was with this nickname. I think I just got frustrated at this Pokemon for taking so long to shine. Gothitelle is another one of my favorite Pokemon designs, and it's probably my favorite Psychic type ever. For battling though, I decided to give it a wide range of special attacking moves and move on to my last hunt, which was a rough one. The final Pokemon I needed to get my hands on was Minior, and for the uninitiated, this is a terribly tricky shiny hunt. The worst part about this hunt is that the overworld sprite is exactly the same, whether it's shiny or not. There's absolutely no way you can pick a shiny out of the crowd just by looking. The only way to tell this guy apart is by battling Minior one by one until your Pokemon refuses to fight it, and boy oh boy is that time consuming. At first I tried finding an outbreak, making a sandwich, and then clearing out every single Pokemon until the outbreak disappeared. If you don't know, there are about 100 Pokemon in each outbreak, so if I clear out enough outbreaks, a shiny was bound to show up, right? That statement just ended up being false for me, because I cleared outbreak after outbreak, and absolutely nothing shined. At this point, I decided to shift tactics, since there's another easier way to hunt this guy. It is a method that's a bit cheesy, but since I'm 54 hours deep into this challenge, I figured I'd be okay giving it a try. If you travel to Chargestone Cave, near this rest spot, there's a location where only Minior can spawn when you use a sandwich. The way Pokemon spawning works in this game is that any given moment, 15 Pokemon can spawn around the player. The interesting part about this number is that special Pokemon, like shinies, do not count towards that 15 Pokemon cap. This means that you can open and close picnics to reset the spawns and count the Pokemon that spawn each time. If that number ever exceeds 15, you know that there's a shiny on your screen, which is perfect when you can't tell the shiny apart from the rest. It didn't take me too long to find 16 Pokemon on my screen. Unfortunately, this happened.
I think I counted 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Well, oh my gosh. 6, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 16. Oh! No.
Sadly, muscle memory took over, and instead of saving, I opened another picnic, having these shiny disappear forever. As they say though, the hunt must go on, and after some more resetting, I actually managed to find 17 mini on my screen, which meant that I finally had my shiny back. Sadly, this was just the beginning of my pain. The final reason why this Pokemon is so tricky to shiny hunt is that it knows the move Explosion.
That's so funny. Unbelievable.
Luckily, I saved this time, but there were so many dead Minior before I finally caught this guy. As a side note, I thought the fact that there were 17 Pokemon on my screen was interesting. I assumed that 2 Pokemon would be shiny, but no matter how many times I battled, I couldn't find a second one, so let me know if I actually had 2 shinies there or not. I couldn't tell. Anyway, meet Megumin. Not only is this one of my favorite shinies, it's another interesting Pokemon to boot. Minior can learn Shell Smash and Acrobatics, so if you give it the right moves and set him up in the right way, he can be a huge threat. The tricky part is going to be keeping him alive, and I'm not sure if I'll be able to do that in a fight against a Turtle God. I'll find out soon enough though, since the time for my rematch has arrived. After a grand total of 55 hours shiny hunting, it's finally time to take on Terapagos again. At this point, I've been playing the DLC for 2 months of real life time, so seeing the end in sight again was comforting. If my last attempt at this finale taught me anything, it's that I can't afford to make a single mistake in my preparation, or during this battle. Even something as simple as terastallizing the wrong Pokemon at the wrong time could put me in a position where I would have to re-hunt another 6 shiny Pokemon. One of the main reasons I failed last time was because I didn't fully understand how the Terapagos fight worked, how the Stellar type worked, or how the boss fight's phases were laid out. Now that I've been through it once, I know a lot more about Terapagos' abilities and typing, and the last thing to consider was the boss's phases, and I decided that there are basically 4 of them. The first phase is the fight against Kieran. In this phase, Terapagos will start off as the Stellar type, but will quickly change to a random type when it's attacked. This makes for an annoying challenge, but it shouldn't be too bad now that I know it's coming. The second phase is when Carmine and I take on Terapagos after it becomes unleashed. At this point, I now know that Terapagos is a normal type, which should give me an edge that I didn't have last time. Having Carmine there too to take some attacks for me will also help my team survive through the whole battle. The third phase is the hardest one, and that's when I'm left alone versus Terapagos. This one is particularly dangerous because all of Terapagos' damage is directed at my team alone. I need to be sure that my Pokemon are able to survive some of its powerful hits, or be able to take out Terapagos quickly in this spot. As was apparent in the last fight, here in this phase he's a Psychic type. Also, based on what happened last time, I could quickly lose everything here in this phase, so my main focus is surviving this one. If I make it to the final phase, Kieran will rejoin the fight with me. Things should be much easier from here on, because as a team, Kieran and I will be able to dish out much more damage, and my team should be able to survive more since the damage is spread out between us two. If I manage to make it this far, there is a very good chance that I'll claim victory, so the goal is to make it here in one piece. With all that knowledge, I crafted my team, planned accordingly, and headed back into the depths of Area 0 to retry this final battle and challenge the Stellar God Terapagos again. This fight will be for all the marbles. With my planning and prep, there is no chance I'll lose to this guy a second time. Earlier in this challenge, I was destroyed by Drayton, but on the rematch, I absolutely thrashed him. Make no mistake, my plan is to do exactly that here and finish this Nuzlocke once and for all. My plan starts off by leading with a Meta. Because of its typing, it should resist most of Terapagos' moves, and I'll be able to deal super effective damage on phase 1 with the fighting moves I taught him. Terapagos is faster though, so I'll have to take some hits first. Unfortunately, Terapagos hit me with an Earth Power, which, to be 100% honest, is a move I absolutely overlooked in my preparation. Have you ever spent hours planning or studying for a test only to realize that you overlooked one obvious key detail? That's what happened here. Despite everything, I overlooked the fact that Terapagos was flaunting a super effective move against Meta. This definitely made for a rough start and took a good chunk of my confidence away. We are here now though, so I decided to make the most of what I had going. For turn 2, I shifted gears, and instead of using fighting moves, I tried Heavy Slam. Earth Power had a chance to hit first though, and it took down Meta to a sliver of health because of a critical hit. While Meta did do a good amount of damage as planned, because Terapagos would outspeed me and take him out, I decided to swap out into Pau instead. I predicted that Terapagos would go for the Earth Power again, so the flying type made sense. It also gave me a good chance to set up. Pau's strategy is to just use moves like Calm Mind and then Baton Pass it to someone that can deal a massive amount of damage. And that's basically what I did. For 3 turns, I ended up using Calm Mind while Pau tanked Terapagos' special attacks. The next turn, I swapped into Spicy Doodle with Baton Pass to take advantage of everything. I had him use Thunderbolt, but because Terapagos Terapagos outspeeds my noodle. He got hit with a Zen Headbutt that did way more damage than I expected it could. Zen Headbutt is a physical move, but jeez, this is phase 1. I shouldn't be struggling so much and taking this much damage before the real fight even starts. To add insult to injury, the Thunderbolt didn't even do enough damage to finish off this phase. I decided to keep Spicy Noodle in, and then use one more Thunderbolt to finish him off. Unfortunately, that meant I took an extra hit before going into the next phase. At this point, I felt like I took so much more damage than I needed to. Having 3 fully injured Pokemon with 3 more phases ahead of me is not ideal. The worst part is that I can't even heal between this phase and the next. I seem to have found myself in another tough situation, but it wouldn't be a good finale without some adversity. Besides, it's not over yet. Even with all the damage, I still have some backup strategies, and if those go according to plan, I should still have enough to overcome this challenge and claim victory. For phase 2, I led with Meta again because I had to, and unfortunately, he's not in great shape. I really didn't think I had any good swaps either, and I decided at this point that I would sacrifice him. One of the goals of this phase is to get enough attacks in to charge my Terra Orb, so I had Meta use Bullet Punch one more time to guarantee I hit before getting buried by Earth Power. I'd be lying if I didn't say this moment stung. In all my strategies and planning before this battle, Meta was a key part. Unfortunately, I made the silly mistake to overlook the move Earth Power, and I ended up paying a huge price for that slip up. But like I said, this is far from over, and I went to plan B by sending out Megumin. The basic plan here was to use Megumin's moves and abilities to set up on its own. I used Shell Smash to raise its speed and attack, and I had it hold the White Herb to fully recover from any losses to its defense. I also had Megumin learn Acrobatics, which is a move that is buffed when the user does not have a held item. Since Megumin's item was just used up, I should be able to use this move to great effect with my increased speed and attack. I'm looking to do massive damage here, but the fact remains that Terapagos will outspeed me at first. This strategy is a bit of a gamble. I need Megumin to survive one attack. If I can pull this off, I should be scot-free. It felt so good to see Megumin survive one hit. At this point, I'm in a great position to take down Terapagos to the next phase, so I lined up a Terraflying Acrobatics that took the beast down quickly to the 3rd phase of this fight. This is the hard one. I ended up taking a lot more damage than I wanted to before I got here, but I'm in a nice spot. Megumin is still all set up, and I should be able to deal a massive amount of damage. Even though Terapagos absorbed my Terra energy and I lost my Terra typing, the Acrobatics should still do a really good amount of damage. I decided not to waste this opportunity, so I had Megumin go for one more Acrobatics. Sadly, against all logic, Terapagos suddenly outsped Megumin, even though it literally last turn I outsped. I wasn't sure exactly what it was, but I managed to overlook something here. This was another huge loss. I thought that I was golden after getting Megumin all set up, but I managed to miss another key detail in my preparation here. This Pokemon was my plan B, another key to my strategy, and without Megumin, things are feeling much more dire. It's still not over though. I've got one plan left, and the pressure is on to see if it works. My next strategy is cheese, so I sent out Tesla. The plan here is to use moves like Thunder Wave and Confuse Ray to stall Terapagos and give me an advantage. Unfortunately, I'll have to call back to one of my shiny hunts I did a few minutes ago. If you remember, I said I'd explain why my build for Tesla was dumb. Well, later is now. This boss battle is just like any Terra raid, and the shield that Terapagos has causes non-damaging moves like Thunder Wave and Confuse Ray to fail by default. I feel so silly and dumb realizing that now, but this is yet another key detail that I glossed over in my preparation. Unfortunately, it's way too late to make up for this mistake. I basically ended up sending Tesla straight to the grave the moment I taught him his status moves. To be real with you, this is basically the nail in the coffin for this second run. This was my 3rd and last plan for this rematch, and it's a shame that a lot of crazy oversights caused these failures. I typically pride myself on being thorough, learning from my mistakes, and being thoughtful when it comes to planning, but I really missed the mark this time. At this point, I'm down to 3 Pokemon. 2 of those are heavily damaged, and one of them doesn't even have any attacking moves. The writing is basically on the wall, and I'm pretty much out of resources. It only took a few more hits for Sassy, Spicy, and Pau to get taken out and leave me with no more Pokemon. This time around, my defeat left me speechless. I pretty much sat in silence for 10 minutes after I lost. I spent so much time hunting, preparing, and studying for this battle, but I totally missed the mark and missed a lot of really key details. On the bright side, there is a lesson here, as there always is in defeat. Just because you spend a lot of time doing something doesn't mean that success is going to come out of it. At the end of the day, the quality of the time spent is much more important than the quantity, and I seem to have forgotten that for this battle. The reality is that I beat myself in this fight, plain and simple. That doesn't change the fact that losing another 6 shiny Pokemon was overwhelming. I usually put a lot of pressure on myself, and failing this catastrophically was taking its toll. I still wanted to complete this challenge, don't get me wrong. I just simply had to put my Switch down and sleep this one off. It was going to take at least a full day to recover from this one given the circumstances. There's another life lesson for you. If you ever feel down on yourself or feel like you just can't continue working on something, there's nothing like a good night's sleep to clear the mind. With a fresh mind, it was time to consult the wheel, hopefully one last time. At this point, I have nothing short of a vendetta against this stupid turtle. It's cruel, but I'll shiny hunt the entire blueberry Pokedex if I have to. I really hope it doesn't come to that in this challenge, but I'll do it if I have to. Besides, you know what they say, third time's the charm. When the time came to spin the wheel and decide who my new teammates were though, I lost a bit of my confidence. The first 5 Pokemon I spun were Dewott, Krokorok, Swasbuck, Minun, and Quillfish. While these Pokemon are fine, I really had a hard time seeing a path to victory with this lineup. There was nothing here that called out to me, nothing screamed Turtle God Killer, and I didn't see any interesting strategies. Don't get me wrong, these are some cool Pokemon and they have some great shinies, but I'm looking for something a bit different if I want to finish this challenge. I'm looking for a monster that can challenge a god and win. None of these options seem to do it for me. It honestly felt like I didn't have a chance here, but all that changed when I spanned my 6th and final Pokemon. My final team member, the one that I knew without a doubt would lead me to victory, the one that I knew could stand toe-to-toe against the Turtle God and win, the one that throughout heaven and earth was the honored one, was Hydrapple. I had a realization when I saw this guy, an epiphany if you will. You can't treat this boss fight like a normal 1v1 Pokemon battle. I feel so dumb saying that out loud now that I've spent 20 hours preparing for this fight and sent 12 shiny Pokemon to the grave, but the reality is that this Terapagos boss battle is just a normal Terra raid. This simple shift in perspective made all the difference going forward for me, as crazy as it sounds. If you want to make fun of me for saying something so obvious this late in the game, you have my permission to do so. It is justified. Pokemon builds for Terra raids are different in that they prioritize longevity over glass cannon type builds. Pokemon that have the ability to survive through an ability, high HP stats, high defense, or even the ability to gain health will always outdo Pokemon that only care about hitting fast and hard. A key reason why many of my Pokemon have not made it through this fight is because they're just glass cannons. Many of the Pokemon I built are just ones that deal a lot of damage fast, but they simply can't take a hit. No matter how hard I try, I won't be able to one-shot Terapagos, so instead I need to rely on strategies that have longevity built in. Hydrapple is the exact Pokemon I need to make this happen, and I'll explain why. First, I'm going to quickly go through the shiny hunts, and to be honest, I didn't even hunt all 6. As crazy as it sounds, the plan is for Hydrapple to solo Terapagos. The only reason I hunted some of the other shiny Pokemon is because it's good fun, and I need Pokemon to sacrifice to make the strategy work at its fullest. Besides the star of the show, I ended up hunting for Deerling and Quillfish. While it took a few hours more than I expected, after enough perseverance the two of them shined eventually. I'm not going to go over the builds for them because it's not important, but I will add them to the shiny hunting timer. To get the star of the show, Hydrapple, I ended up hunting Applin using the AFK shiny hunt in the Tag Tree Thicket, so it wasn't too bad. After a bit of waiting and auto-battling, it didn't take too long until I spotted the green apple. Are you serious? That was so fast. That's awesome. Meet Hydrapple. Similar to Archlodon, I didn't nickname this guy since it's a brand new Pokemon in the DLC and I wanted to get a chance to learn the new names. That said, here's how I'm gonna solo Terapagos. This guy is very bulky. I maxed out his HP and special defense to make sure he could take as many hits as possible during this battle. Here's the secret sauce to this strategy. Hydrapple's gonna learn the move Grassy Terrain, hold the leftovers, and then spam the move Giga Drain until she can't anymore. This combination of life-gaining tactics should allow Hydrapple to stay alive for the duration of the fight. In theory, I should be able to just spam this move to recover enough from any damaging moves and chip away slowly at Terapagos' health until the end of the fight. If that's not enough and things get really bad, I go to plan B and use Hydrapple's Regenerator ability, which is why I caught a few extra shiny Pokemon. This ability will allow Hydrapple to restore 33% of its health when it swaps out, so if things get dicey, I can just sacrifice a shiny party member to get some extra healing. It's morbid, I know, but you have to understand that with the amount of time and effort put into this challenge, anything goes. Even Pokemon abuse. It sounds like a really good plan, but everything I have is riding on Hydrapple's ability to solo Terapagos. This is an all-or-nothing strategy. If Hydrapple falls, if I overlooked any detail, or if I make any mistakes, that's curtains, and I'm back to the drawing board for a 4th time. Even with the risky strategy, to be honest, I had much more confidence this time than I ever had before. At this point, this Nuzlocke isn't about winning anymore. It's about the lessons we've learned and the personal growth experienced along the way. Every challenge, every setback, and every triumph has gotten us to this point. If you are still here, I want to thank you for pushing me to my limits and inspiring me to be my best. The amount of time and effort to get to this point is astounding, and it's an absolute honor to share my experience in this moment with you. I'm on the brink of finishing this challenge that I've been working on for months, and it's hard to describe all the emotions I'm feeling right now. This has been one of the hardest projects I've ever worked on, and the difficulty promised by all the trailers and hype for this DLC was not a lie either. With all that said, it's time to take on Terapagos for the 3rd time. Good luck, you stupid turtle. You are going to need it. For phase 1, it looked like my plan was going to work out great. On Terapagos' first attack, Zen Headbutt did next to no damage to Hydrapple. In fact, after healing from both grassy terrain and leftovers, Hydrapple was back at full health. I do love it when a plan comes together. The next step of my plan was to Terastallize and take down Terapagos with Giga Drain. I thought that the Terra Boost and the grassy terrain would be enough to one-shot him, but it's never that easy. Terapagos' Terra Shift ability turned him into a type that resisted grass attacks, so it survived to live another turn. It's a little bit of a setback, but I wasn't too worried about it. Quite simply, Hydrapple is recovering to full health at the end of each turn, so the remainder of this phase was pretty trivial. I just kept spamming Giga Drain until Terapagos fell. I was feeling so good at this point. The first few times I struggled in this phase, but I finally found myself in the best position ever going into the second phase. Switching up my strategies to use a Pokemon that prioritizes healing and longevity was such a good choice. There's such a huge advantage to still being at full health at this point. I shouldn't get too ahead of myself, and I should stay focused. Things are a lot scarier now that Terapagos is Terastallized. This Pokemon hits much harder now, and I got my first real wake-up call when Terapagos finally used his signature move, Terra Starstorm. If I'm not careful, this move has the potential to be super effective on Hydrapple and maybe even one-shot her. If I decide to Terastallize at the wrong time or before I need to, things will be over very quickly, so I need to make sure I'm focused and be very deliberate about when I Terastallize. Keep in mind too that between Giga Drain, leftovers, grassy terrain, and the life dew from Sinistra, Hydrapple is ending up at full health pretty much every turn yet again. It only took a few turns before I found myself in a position where I wanted to Terastallize Hydrapple. This next move is a critical moment. I need to Terastallize in order to do enough damage on account of Terapagos' shield. But if Terapagos manages to survive, I'll for sure take a huge hit from Terra Starstorm and maybe even faint. This moment is just one of the joys of an all or nothing strategy. You get stressful moments like these. I don't know why I was so worried though, because Giga Drain did way more than enough damage. With that delightful outcome, Terapagos was moved to the next part of the battle, and after a scripted takedown of Sinistra, I found myself in a 1v1 against Terapagos for phase 3. This is the scariest part of the battle. Since it's a 1v1 now, all of Terapagos' powerful attacks are focused directly on Hydrapple. I've put every chance I have into Hydrapple's ability to gain enough health to overcome the damage she will take. That said, and based on how this first phase went, this shouldn't be too big of a problem. It turns out though that damage wasn't the only thing I had to worry about. There was an issue that became increasingly apparent. Giga Drain has only 10 PP. Even though I did plan ahead and use a PP max to get the most uses out of this critical move, I'm starting to run out pretty quick. At this stage, I only have 3 left, and Terapagos is only a quarter of the way to being defeated. Luckily, I also planned ahead a bit and had some other damaging moves available, like Fickle Beam, though I probably should have PP maxed that one too. It's only got 5 uses. Because I still had to do damage to charge my Terra Orb, and I still had to maintain some healing with grassy terrain, I kept using those 2 moves until I was able to Terastallize. With each turn, because I lost the ability to heal using Giga Drain, Hydrapple was starting to accumulate damage very slowly. At its worst, she was at half health, which is pretty scary when critical hits are a real possibility in this battle. That said though, the time quickly came for me to use Giga Drain and Terastallize for a second time. Just like before, I need this to knock out Terapagos and put him into the next phase. If this fails, not only is there an increased potential for Hydrapping fainting on the tail end here, the amount of moves I have left is limited even if I survive. Every single attack I have at this point is so valuable, and using 1 or 2 extra moves beyond what I need to could easily be the difference between failing and succeeding in this run. There is a lot on the line here. Unfortunately, Giga Drain didn't quite do it. Terapagos was left with a sliver of health for this phase. To make things worse, the move that I dreaded came. Terapagos used the super effective Terra Starstorm. Maybe I was overthinking it, but she took it so well. She was brought down to half health though, which is a position I don't want to be in. I imagine a crit here would have been a disaster. With that stressful situation over though, I committed to using my second last Giga Drain to finish off this phase. This is officially the farthest I've ever come, but I only have a few damaging moves left and Terapagos is at half health. Things would be very rough if I was on my own, but thankfully for this phase, I've got some help on my side. Kieran has been watching us the entire time, and up until now, he's been downright dejected. He's felt useless. No matter how hard he worked or how many times he tried, he seemed to always fail in the end. Put yourself in his shoes for a second. Kieran has had an obsession with beating us. His first attempt was to become the best possible Pokemon trainer he could, at the cost of his friendships at school. Even with all of his effort, training, and sacrifice, we still beat him in the end. Look at this current situation too. He went so far as to try and capture a legendary Pokemon just to best us. It's not like he did that half-heartedly either. He left nothing to chance. He found himself a Master Ball to guarantee capture this beast, and even that failed in the end. He's simply broken. But it's up to us to encourage him. Honestly, part of going through life is learning to deal with failure and hardship. No matter how carefully you plan or prepare, at some point, something is going to step in and ruin your day. As you go through life, you could lose a Pokemon battle in a Nuzlocke, you could have a bad breakup, you could get a bad grade on a test, or a loved one could pass away. Life sucks, and we can't control every part of it, but we can control how we feel about and approach these challenges. If you're having a tough time with anything, large or small, remember that these roadblocks are not the end. Adversity always sucks, but my advice is to try seeing it as an opportunity to grow or to get closer to others. In this situation, Kieran nearly caused the death of his friends and put the entire region at risk, but even still, after some encouragement, he stepped up to the challenge and joined the fight. He's failed over and over again, but every single time he's gotten up to face whatever's ahead of him. I'd say this time the big difference is that I can see the life in his eyes again, and boy oh boy am I glad to see those, since I'm going to need his help. I only have 4 attacking moves left. 1 Giga Drain, and 3 Fickle Beams. I need to be really careful about what moves I use and when in order to keep Hydrapple alive, as well as dish out as much damage as I need to finish this battle. I ended up using all of my remaining Fickle Beams until I was able to Terrastallize. I also fit in a grassy terrain to maximize the damage of my last Giga Drain. Just like the last phase too, because I stopped using Giga Drain, every single turn I took some more and more damage, so things were a bit stressful. It was also a bit unfortunate to see Kieran's Hydrapple fall while I was setting up. I was really hoping that this wasn't some omen. Luckily, unlike Carmine, Kieran's got a full team and his Dragonite took his place. The time was finally here though for my final Giga Drain. My last damaging move. For the same reasons as before, this needs to send Terapagos into the next phase. As long as that shield stays up, I won't have a chance to take this thing down. This is the farthest I've ever come in this battle, but since this is my last damaging move, this absolutely needs to finish the job. With that, the shield shattered, and I entered a final battle where it was me and Kieran versus normal Terapagos. The obvious issue was still looming though, and I had no idea what to do about it. I'm absolutely out of attacking moves. Hydrapple has no more ways to reduce Terapagos' last little chunk of health to 0. I managed to come this far, but I have absolutely no idea how I'm going to finish this. I racked my brain for a short while, but I realized the solution was right in front of me the whole time. While it's not the most heroic ending to this story, it's my last remaining option. I'm gonna have to let Kieran finish off Terapagos for me. I built my Hydrapple to stall. It only has moves to recover health and increase its defense. All I can do now is just spam those moves until Kieran's team can take out Terapagos for me. It's a little bit embarrassing, and if I were to have written a script for this story, I would have liked to have myself deal the finishing blow, but to be honest, I'm okay with it ending this way. This is a chance for Kieran to have his victory. The poor guy has been taking defeat after defeat, and it's magical to have him win such a critical final battle for me. I've always stolen the spotlight from him, and this is his chance to shine. At first, I spammed Reflect while Dragonite used Thunder to slowly dwindle down Terapagos' health. I even had to enact my ultimate stalling plan by swapping into Swasbuck, the shiny I caught earlier. This is a sacrifice play, and it's a bit cruel, but it does give Kieran a turn to do some more damage. Sadly, Dragonite missed a lot of Thunders, and Swasbuck fell, but luckily Hydrapple was back to full health and ready to stall some more for Kieran. Even though Dragonite couldn't get the job done, Kieran sent out Porygon Z. If you can recall, this Pokemon did a number on my team earlier, but it's funny now to find myself in a situation where I'm rooting for it. At this point, he went for a Hyper Beam, but that didn't quite do enough damage. Oh, this is so close to being over, but now that he's used Hyper Beam, he's got to take a turn to recover. Sadly, because of that, a few Terra Starstorms was all it took for Porygon to fall. And then I had a thought. Kieran doesn't have an infinite number of Pokemon. If he can't take out Terapagos with his remaining 3 Pokemon, I'm going to have no chance of beating this guy. Things were looking good though, since Kieran sent out Incineroar, one of the strongest Pokemon of all time. For the final turn, Kieran's Incineroar used Darkest Lariat to take down Terapagos to a sliver of health, and in a very poetic way, this challenge was finished off with the move Retaliate. This move was boosted because one of Kieran's Pokemon fainted last turn, but there was definitely a moral boost tied into that Retaliate too. I finally felt like I got my revenge on this turtle, and it was so amazing. I can't hog all the glory though. In a large part, this is all thanks to Kieran. Also, a huge thanks to you if you're still watching. I wouldn't have done this without you. I didn't do the exact math, but if I had to guess, this victory was on the tail end of about 100 hours of gameplay. To say I was elated was an understatement. Thanks for watching, I really do appreciate it, and I hope your day is just a little bit better by watching this. As always, like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed it. I'm really looking for your feedback on this one.